Cardinals bounce back in front. This game is off the rails.
For Burton, no, into the end zone, jump ball, caught, touchdown, Theo Weiss. The former Sooner holds it up for his second of the night.
Arnold hit, ball's loose, and is scooped up by the Tigers. Zion Young with the scoop, big score.
Sharp back to Arnold, and the ball will trickle out of bounds in Missouri on a white knuckle ride. Holds on to knock off Oklahoma in a thriller of a fourth quarter.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That is what it sounded like on Saturday on the SEC network. Tom Hart on the call. He was on TMA earlier today describing the scene out in Columbia. And this is no surprise to probably many of you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. I am more happy today about the Missouri victory than my fellow cohorts here. Alex and T-Bone both walked in today, peed in my Cheerios, said, "Good day, fellow." And I said, "Thank you. I feel good about Missouri." And they said, "I don't." That, to me, it's not the most important victory that Eli Drinkwitz has had at Mizzou. I still believe that to be K-State last year. Without that win, I'm not sure the rest of the season is possible. Without that season, I'm not sure people are excited about the Eli Drinkwitz experience. It changed the trajectory of the program. They needed that one more than any other win that he's had so far. That might have been the second most important win, though, because you think about almost apathy that was starting to set in for Mizzou fans this year, which is a weird thing to say about a team that at that point had 2 losses on the season. But massive loss at Alabama, complete blowout at Texas A&M, just a no-show in that one. The offense looks like it's completely off the rails. People are mad about Brady Cook, and then Drew Pine comes in, and they're like, why don't you have any other backup quarterback that's better than this? This feels impossible. And then they go out there on Saturday and looked incompetent offensively for a half. It's a good OU defense, but a terrible Oklahoma offense, thank God, because otherwise that game would have gotten out of hand before it did. And then you get into the fourth quarter, and you watch Drew Pine, and you're like, wait, where's this guy been, man? He looked fine. Like, not great, but fine. Made a couple of throws, gave his guys a chance. Theo Weiss goes out there. Where's that guy been all year? Luther Burden makes a huge play for them down the stretch as well. Where's that guy been in the last, 6 weeks of the season? Dude, that's as much fun as I've had watching Mizzou football down the stretch of a game in a really long time. Certainly this year. This is as much fun as I've had watching Mizzou in any individual game this season. Auburn was awesome. This almost felt a little different because of how unexpected it all was. What did you take away from it, Alex? What did it mean for you as a fan? What did it mean for this team?
He sounds so sad when he's about to hand it over to me because he's like
sad transition.
He's at the ultimate high and then it just falls down. So look, full exclusivity here. I only saw parts of this because at the same time the Blues game is going on. So I'm
sorry, man.
You got the gist.
You need a hug from that?
No,
Yeah,
kind of. But I'm watching it on my phone at the time. And here's the thing: it was a really exciting game. Because of what you just said. Drew Pine was under center. I thought the first quarter was what we were going to watch for the next 3 quarters.
Yeah.
And what they did in the second half was not expected.
Really, the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, I did not really think Mizzou was going to be able to put any effort up. But I think that also goes to show you how bad Oklahoma has been. But bigger picture, as the game ended, you look at it and you're like, wow, okay, you have a comeback victory against Oklahoma, 30-23, but I kind of sat there and I was like, that's fine, but that's about it. Because
that's all the emotion that you had for that game?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I felt more excited with Brady Cook returning in the game to help them win.
Sure.
That felt a little bit more exciting. And the game itself
because
was
at that point you had 1 loss and you're still in the college football playoff mix. And you were wondering, can Brady Cook play next week against Alabama? And if he can, maybe
this guy was at a hospital and here he's running on cloud 9.
I just think the bigger picture with this one was looking at it as, look, this Mizzou offense has underperformed all season to where it's been you going into a game, you're thinking this is the moment it's going to turn around. And I never thought it was going to turn around with Drew Pine, but it's always left something else to be desired because I thought they were a playoff team. I thought this was a team that could have some longevity success this season. And you watch that and you're like, man, great comeback, but you were crap for the first 2 quarters.
I need to ask the listener something. Because I know where T-Bone's going with this, and I don't think he's alone. I want to say that up front. I don't think Tanner is alone in what he's about to say. Am I soft for thinking 10 wins is a good season for Mizzou? Am I accepting mediocrity if I say a 10-win season at a program like Mizzou should be considered to be a good and successful season? Because for me as a fan, here's the entire list of Mizzou football seasons in the last 100 years in which they have won 10 games or more, okay? 2013, 2007, 2023, 2014, 1960, 2008, 2010. End of list. 7 seasons in the last 100 years, they have won 10 games or more. Now, if you limit it even further, 2 or fewer losses on the season since they have gone to this schedule where they've got 12-plus games in a season. It is 2007, 2023, 2013. End of list. I'm supposed to view this season as a disappointment. If they potentially get to like 11-2, they win out the rest of the way, and they win their their bowl game, whatever it may end up being. Like, I'm not telling you that you have to be over the moon. It would be disappointing they didn't get into the college football playoff in a season in which that was the stated goal prior to the season. I'm totally with you. I'm also not going to call it a failure. And I'm going to consider it to mostly be a success given the context of what we have seen with Drew Pine being your starting quarterback, us clearly seeing that the team wasn't as talented with some of the transfers coming in as we expected them to be. I'm going to adjust my expectations with the information that we've been given. But T-Bone, I know you very much do not see it that way, and I am curious where the text line comes in on that.
Yeah, I think prior to a 12-team playoff, like if this was last year, for example, and that was the 4-team playoff, hey, man, 10 wins, pat on the back, that's a hell of a season. But I think now that there's the 12-team playoff, 10 wins should, in theory, get you to the college football playoff. And the fact that the stated goal was, hey, what you just said, the stated goal coming in the season was college football playoff or bust. You don't get there, then 10 wins doesn't mean anything. You know, I think teams that the only time 10 wins will matter if they miss a college football playoff, if it's a team like Illinois that came into the season who I truly thought may not make a bowl game this season. That's why when they win 9 or even 8 games, honestly, there's a chance they lose another game in their schedule. I'm going to be happy with that season because there were no expectations. But the moment you have playoff expectations, 10 wins means nothing unless you're dancing in that 12-team playoff. And that's why I think
really
it would be a disappointing
for
season.
College football. Like,
now,
if that's
you're
true,
unhappy with the 12-team playoff?
No, I still think the 12-team playoff is a great thing. I think if that's the way that fans view it, and it's just about getting into the 12-team playoff, then we've lost something that is the heart of college football. Like, I really do believe that. If you win 10 games and your fan base views it as a disappointment or a letdown of a season, at a place like Mizzou, Georgia's different. Listen, I'm sorry. I think Mizzou fans agree with me on this. Georgia's a little different. Texas is a little different. Alabama's a little different.
You guys can get there.
Ohio State a little different. If you're one of those programs and you view 10 wins as a disappointment, fair. Your entire history of your program has been that. Missouri hasn't, man. It hasn't been this. It's basically had, like, in my entire life, 5 seasons of seeing something like this. I've got to appreciate what we've got here. I think people are crapping on Mizzou's season and crapping on Eli Drinkwitz way too much. Way too much. And I think it's wildly unrealistic to expect it to get, I'm sorry, a lot better than this. You won 11 games last season. That's really freaking impressive, dude. And to be able to follow that up in the next season with a year like this, where you're 7-2 now, you've won 18 of your last 21 games, whatever it is. I'm not going to be the one that sits up here and is like, disappointing. I can't do it.
And
I'm giving Drink his flowers today. I can't believe you won that game. I can't believe
I'm
it.
with you there. I was shocked that Drew Pine led them to a comeback victory.
I can't believe you won that game. I can't believe they won the game against Auburn. Like, there has been some real disappointing outings this year against Texas A&M and Alabama. Totally. Everybody agrees. He won the game. The goal is to win.
You know what? The disappointing part of it feels like if you go back and you look at last year, that game against LSU, Mizzou had a realistic shot to win that game.
And Jaden Daniels did it to him.
I know, but Georgia, you had a realistic shot to win that game. The 2 games that you went up against the top competition, you had no shot of winning those games. And it just kind of, the reason it feels disappointing is it feels like you leave something on the table. Because defensively, this has been a really good team this year. And I didn't expect that. Offensively, you were supposed to carry over what you had last year. And I know the last couple of games you have not had Brady Cook. But you go to the games prior to that. Sure,
I think it's really the Texas A&M game because Alabama, I think you have to grade on a scale. That
I would
second
agree with
half,
that one.
you had no chance. And in the first half, you were in it up until Brady Cook got hurt.
Yeah.
When Brady Cook went down, that's when the game
was hurt
completely
while
ended.
that game was going on.
Because Drew Pine throws the interception, you're down 6-0 at that point. That's a game. Like that's what you're talking about last year. They were basically in that game against Alabama where they were against LSU, against Georgia. Different, because those games were high scoring, but they were in that one the same way that they were last year. Drew Pine comes in and does, it's one of the worst performances I've ever seen by a Mizzou quarterback. And I'm not overstating that. I'm so glad for him that he got this redemption in the final 5 minutes of the game on Saturday, because he needed it, because that was embarrassing what happened to him against Alabama. But I view those as quite different.
Yeah. That's just, at least I'm looking at last season and this season, and it just feels like you left something on the table. And again, if you have to explain this season off with injuries to where your quarterback goes down and the top running back goes down for you, it's understandable. But it just feels like you left something on the table, which is where the disappointment sets in for Mizzou this year.
And like, I think last year, success, 11 wins. Granted, I'm not Cotton Bowl, whatever. They beat Ohio State's third strings.
Yeah, last year was an absolute
huge
success in every possible
But with that, it adds to the increased expectation of college football playoff or bust. And the more and more the college football expands, hey, look, these teams in these Power Four conferences, the expectations from their fan base should be playoffs. And you know what, Drinkwitz, it's not like he's not recruiting at a different level. It's not like you're looking at his roster and I'm like Brett Beal, look, great season. The huge announcement for a 3-star quarterback out of Florida. Look, let's start getting the 4 stars. Drink's getting the 4 and 5 stars, man. That adds to expectations. That adds to Drinkwitz needs to, I agree, probably shouldn't be the expectation every single year that Mizzou should be a 10-win program. But when you have those seasons pop up, you need to make the college football playoff, because it could be a 3 or 4 year window before you get back into that conversation. And that's why, for me, when I say they don't make expectations, I don't want to make it sound like I'm crapping on Drink, because I think Drink's done an unbelievable job as a head coach at Missouri.
Agreed.
I do think he's fallen a little short this season. And with that being said, if you win 10 games and miss a playoff, and if I'm being honest, I think they win 10 games, they still might make the playoff.
We'll talk about that later. There's a way. It's just a very specific route.
But
I have to literally earlier today.
17 things happen for you, but there's a way.
But that's the goal, right? It is the playoff. And when you set that as the expectation or the goal when the season starts, I'm not changing that goal. And I understand they've dealt with injuries. I could circle the A&M game as the one where it was, okay, that's where they disappoint, and that's what's ultimately probably going to lead to their season being disappointing, because they got rid of one of those mulligans when they were healthy, by the way. So for me, 10 wins, don't make the playoff. I get what you're saying, but because it is a 12-team playoff, the goal is to get there. To me, it would be a disappointing season for Mizzou.
And I guess what I would say is, like, I assumed coming into the year 10-2 would be good enough to get into the playoff. Even with the 2 losses being the 2 that they ended up having. Like last year, you look at it, the top 12 teams in the country were all 10-2 or better. There were only 2 teams that had 2 losses or fewer that are in a Power 5 conference that ended up outside of the top 12. It was Louisville and it was Iowa. Last year, in the same circumstances, I think Missouri probably makes the college football playoff. This year, it's a weird season for college football, and it's probably not going to be good enough. And part of that is because you have these 2 behemoth conferences, and I think both the SEC and the Big Ten are likely to get 4. You need there to be 5. Missouri needs the SEC to get 5 teams into the college football playoff, and if that ends up being the case, there is a path. We'll discuss that a little bit further coming up at 12 o'clock.
Real quick, I don't know, maybe I'm off in this one as well, but when you looked at their schedule compared to the rest of the SEC, it added to that expectation.
That is totally fair.
Because we came into the year talking about them being the 4th or 5th best SEC team.
You didn't get the Oklahoma schedule, which was, hey, welcome. Now here's all the 6 best teams in the conference. Good luck.
A big part of our preseason expectations were tied to look at the schedule. Yeah. It was as much about the schedule as it was about the quality of the team.
Yeah. And we also warned at the beginning of the year, or at least I tried to raise the alarm bells of, okay, this is a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing that you don't have a difficult schedule.
No doubt. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. As we go along here today, plenty of conversation from you. As I mentioned, coming up at the 12 o'clock hour, we'll discuss the path that technically exists for Mizzou to get into the college football playoff, although very, very narrow. We'll get into that later on today. But coming up next, Alex, I'm sorry, buddy. We got to relive whatever the hell that was on Saturday night.
Do we?
We sure do.
Damn it.
What does that tell us about this Blues team that they were capable of losing like that? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Caps bring it in, tap it in, and score! A lost battle in front of the net, and it went off a skate, and I believe for Washington. 3:15 to go in the third, and it's now 8-1.
Well, and you know it's bad. Look at the Capitals right now. They're not even going through their bench. They just go back to line up.
A shot whistled with 1 second to go, and this one's going to end for the St. Louis Blues in an 8-1 defeat.
Changing guys in and out of the lineup obviously isn't an option right now, but the players themselves and the group in the room, if they play to their potential, will win hockey games, and it's being consistent from day to day to be able to do that.
That is Drew Bannister, Blues head coach, after an unacceptable performance by the St. Louis Blues. Here's what Jeremy Rutherford wrote about over at The Athletic. We'll talk to JR tomorrow about that game. Quote, there are unacceptable performances, and then there's giving up. The Blues, who went into the third period trailing 3-1, involuntarily cleared the way for the Capitals to tack on 5 more goals, gave up. He said it was the worst effort he's seen in his 20 years covering the St. Louis Blues, Alex. Some harsh criticism and deserved criticism from Jeremy Rutherford. Alex, Blues lose at home 8-1 against the Washington Capitals on Saturday night. You were in the arena for that one. You saw it all play out in front of you. What happened?
They gave up. There's no other way to explain it. And I say they gave up. That's what Justin Falk and both Braden Shen said, because the first and second period the Blues were playing toe-to-toe with Washington. I actually thought they had the better second period. It's just Alex Ovechkin caught you with that lethal shot, and then a turnover in the neutral zone resulted in another goal. But you were down by 2 going into the third period, an area that this Blues team has been in plenty this season. But as soon as they took a penalty and Alex Ovechkin scored that power play goal, it was just, well, we're not coming back in this one. And so much so that you just saw the Washington Capitals skate through your players. And that's what I think Justin Falk and Braden Shen meant by you just can't give up. If you go back and watch the highlights off of their 5th goal, their 7th goal, and their 8th goal. God. I know, I can't believe I just did that. From the Washington's own end up to the net for the Blues, there were 3 passes. There were 3 passes that resulted from one end of the ice to the other and into the back of the net.
Feels bad, Alex.
That's not good, Brandon. That is not good at all.
You know it's bad when you call me Brandon.
Yeah, I had to watch it, and we're reliving this crap. This was the part that got me, and we were talking about this on postgame Saturday night. This shouldn't surprise anyone that they're in this spot, but the surprising part is now they've just decided to give up. The Blues have trailed in 13 of their 15 games this season.
That seems bad.
They have played in 15 games, and in 13 of them, they have trailed in every single one of them. The 2 games that they have not trailed in, one of them, they did not lead until they scored the game-winning goal in overtime, and that was the New York Islanders game. The only game that they have led in this season was the 5-1 victory against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So this is an area...
So to rephrase this, the only game that the Blues have had all season long in which they have either been tied or leading the entirety of that game was in regulation was against Toronto.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or in the Islanders. They were tied with the Islanders, but it was 0-0 all the way through. But I bring this up because the reason that game was so ugly, and I'm not even comparing it to the Ottawa Senators' 8-1 loss, because that game, you had some tough bounces that went against you, and special teams killed you. Your penalty kill was awful in that game, and I think they scored 3 or 4 power play goals. But this one against the Capitals, you were in it. And then in the third period, it was just, nope, we're not coming back in this one. It was shades of 2 years ago to where you knew that the floor just dropped out from underneath you and there was no getting it back. And for this Blues team, the frustrating part, I would imagine, for Blues fans is watching it, you thought you were past it. You thought you were past the leaders on the team having to come out saying that was an unacceptable performance. We have to be better. We gave up. Lack of effort, whatever it might be, but you've said it twice in the last 6 games. That's the problem for the Blues right now.
I didn't think they had this in them to give up. Because the one positive that I've been saying about the Blues all year long is that they don't do that. Like, it's the identity of the roster. They keep playing, they keep skating, they keep trying, they keep pushing. And that sounds overly simplistic, but man, that's who the Blues have been in 2024. This version of them, at least. Now, there's been a couple of games that it gets away from them, and that's going to happen. They're not a very good team right now. We knew that coming into the season. But the whole identity was tied into, yeah, but we're going to fight our asses off. And if we end up losing at the end of the night, tip our cap to the other team. Congratulations, you go on and win, and we'll try it again the next time around. And that wasn't how they played in that third period on Saturday. The first 2 periods, like, set those aside because really they were down 3-1. You could say they were the better team. You could say the other, whatever. It was a tight game going into that third period. And then the third period happened and you let go of the rope. I just don't know how that happens. Given what this team has been all season long, and maybe it's just like out of exhaustion because you have been trying to do it that way, but it's only 15 games into the season, man. We're not in like mid-January. This isn't a scenario where they've been battling and they've gone through 6 weeks of injuries. No, like, you're 2 weeks into these injuries, dude. Like, we have not gotten very far into this thing. What's this going to look like in mid-December when you go on another road trip and guys are annoyed? And especially, like, look at early December, Alex. Look at that road trip that's coming up. Yeah. We talk about this all the time, that Western Canada road trip, right? It's always exhausting. People talk about it. It's cold. It's nasty outside. There's nothing to do. Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. How is this team going to respond then if this is the way that they respond now when you're in the midst of a 5-game homestand? That's my concern. I'm not overly concerned about the Blues' big picture, but when I when I give them credit all season long for being one thing, and it's gritty, really.
Yeah.
And then in a game, they show you the opposite of that. It does make you wonder, is this a sign of things to come? Should I be worried about that? Or was this a true one-off, and they're going to be able to stop the bleeding? I don't know, but I think that's what we're going to find out tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You get your answer tomorrow night, because how you respond to a game like that is important. But then it's also important to capitalize on that, because even Bannister said it on postgame. He's like, look, we found ways to respond after ugly games. The problem is we can't string those together. And this is a hard brand of hockey to play. I know nobody wants to hear it, but when you don't have Robert Thomas who can clean up a lot of those errors on the ice, when you don't have Philip Broberg who cleans up a lot of the errors on the ice, you have to play perfect hockey. And right now, they're not playing perfect hockey, but you're also to the point where I would imagine it's exhausting to have to realize you're coming from behind every single game, and you don't have any of these reinforcements coming back for St. Louis. So all of those sound like excuses. They're not, because the Blues did it against Toronto twice. They did it against Tampa Bay. But there has been zero consistency with this Blues team, and I think that's where those frustrating players' comments came Saturday night.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to hear from a couple of them. Justin Falk, Braden Shin, two of the leaders on this team, were asked afterwards how they would assess what happened in that game. Here's Justin Falk on the how unacceptable that performance was.
It's completely unacceptable. That's not all right. I don't think that should ever happen. A situation like that. We need to have respect for each other, the game. Like, you can't just go out there and play summer hockey for a period and think that's all right at any point.
And here's Braden Shin and how he would assess what that game was.
Guys just stop playing, and that's what happens when you stop playing, and you just stop. Every single guy is held responsible tonight as far as letting that get to 8, and we obviously have some sorting out to do here, and need a response on Tuesday.
Alex, I have made some changes to the lines. It looks like at practice today, Kyrou, Buch, and Neighbors are your top line once again. Buchnevich, after one game on the wing, is back to center.
Well, he didn't score any goals, Brandon, so I was wrong there.
Holloway, Shin, and Joseph. Good to see Joseph potentially back into the lineup. I think that's a huge addition. Toropchenko, Foxa, Walker is now going from your fourth line to your third line. And then on your fourth line, it is Saad, Sonny, and Texier. It is worth noting that Bolduc is an extra today at morning skate.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be an extra on Saturday, but Texier was he was like right before the game, didn't take the ice for warm-ups.
Listen, it is what it is, whatever. I'm not going to put up a huge fight at this point because whatever. I think you're just totally misutilizing Bolduc in this season. If he's not going to be in there every night, send him back down to the AHL. Just do it.
Yep.
I don't understand how they've been utilizing him in general. He shouldn't be a fourth-line player for you. That's not his future. And for Army, who said all along, like, hey, he's either going to be a top 6 player for us or he's going down. Not only is he not a top 6 player, he's a fourth-line player pretty regularly for the Blues right now. It's a total misuse of that asset. If this guy's going to be somebody in your future that is a top 9 forward, I love Nathan Walker. There's no scenario in which Nathan Walker should be playing on your third line over Zach Bolduc.
Yeah.
There's none.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view that. But whatever, again, they need a response. Maybe they're saying, hey, we have guys in there right now that we think are going to bring us energy in this game. Walker, Torpo, we believe in them. Whatever. Cool. What do you make of the changes that they've made, Alex? Anything that stands out to you?
The biggest thing is Joseph. Like, you hope that Matthew Joseph, and look, he's not going to be like the savior of this Blues team, but you hope he can bring some energy and at least offense to your top 6. But, yeah, I mean, right now, you go just off of the accountability factor. Brandon Saad goes all the way, if you're going to go off of these line combinations, Brandon Saad goes all the way from a top 6 role to your fourth line. You're using your third line your fourth line as your third line, and Zach Bolduc and Kasperi Kapanen are out. So, like, accountability factors, you're probably looking at a Saad, Bolduc, and Kapanen that are suffering from it. But those guys aren't the issue. Like, you've been relying, I went back and looked at their last 4 games. In terms of your top players, meaning the top line guys, Chen, Kyrou, Buchnevich, Neighbors, you've had 3 goals from those guys in your last 4 games, and they've all been from Jordan Kyrou. Your fourth line has scored 2 of them. Your defense has scored 5 of them.
Jeez.
So, like, the problem isn't Bolduc being an extra in this one. I mean, sure, you need Bolduc to shoot the puck more. The problem isn't Brandon Saad going to your fourth line. The problem is against Washington, your top line, which was Shen, Buchnevich, and Kyrou, were on the ice for 4 goals against. Your problem is you are not getting the offense that you need from those guys to carry you. And Bannister said it postgame. Our best players need to be our best players, not just in a game, but consistently for 60 minutes, and they're not getting that.
Some of this is what I expected this year. I didn't expect like an 8-1 loss that looks that lopsided. Some nights like that happening twice in 2 weeks, that's not acceptable. But a lot of this is just kind of what I thought would happen. I didn't think they were going to be a great team going into the season. They've got some young guys, but it's happening in ways that I didn't anticipate. Zach Bolduc not even being a part of the lineup, I didn't see that coming. If you're in the midst of a retool and you're trying to build for the future, and this is not an all-in season, it just seems strange to me, some of the in-game decisions that are taking place, but that's another conversation for another day. He's Alex's T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Coming up next, it was a wild Sunday in the NFL, and I'm ready to ask you guys a question that I was unprepared to ask coming out of last week. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues lost over the weekend. They are off today as they return back to action tomorrow night as they host the Boston Bruins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And Joey will join Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 7. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got Monday Night Football as the Rams take on the Miami Dolphins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Dealer's choice, Alex. Would you rather start with a Texans-Lions game or the Chiefs game?
Texans-Lions, please.
Cool. Texans-Lions it is.
Last night,
Chiefs
for a man.
Texans are up 23-7 at the half. And I'm thinking to myself, A, damn, that's a tough one, Alex. Rough loss for you there. And B,
Nah, I had full faith.
all right, maybe the Texans are going to get this thing back on track. Because prior to that game, I was basically, T-Bone, we talked about this last week. I was out on the Texans. I'm done. They don't look like a real contender to me. That would have been a signature victory for them. And then the second half happens. And they find a way, somehow, some way, to lose 26-23, despite Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions in the game and doing everything he possibly could to give that thing away. Alex, if I was out last week on the Texans, I could not be more out this week on the Texans. I don't know what's happened to them. I understand they've got some injuries in the receiving core. That offensive line isn't what they expected. This offense shouldn't be that bad.
No.
And the defense shouldn't allow the Lions to come back like that in the second half. What was your biggest takeaway from Lions-Texans?
Mine was actually more on the Lions side because I'm with you. I'm done with the Texans. I've been done with them for a couple of weeks. That was just embarrassing. Mine was more on the Lions side. I am now sold that the Lions are the best team in the NFC, and frankly, I believe that will be a Super Bowl contender. Agreed. And that's off of their quarterback throwing 5 interceptions. But they also did not have their top pass rusher in Zadarius Smith that they got at the trade deadline. You had a bad night. But that bad night resulted in you finding a way to climb back into that football game. That offense, to me, is the best in the NFL. And I think a lot of people, after watching the performance of the Lions against the Texans, are probably looking at that as that's the Super Bowl contender on the NFC side.
If you think today that they're the Super Bowl favorite, I would understand it.
Yeah.
I said last week, I think it's laughable if you have the Bills or the Ravens ahead of the Chiefs in the power rankings. If you have the Lions ahead of them, I got no problems with that.
Yeah.
Totally fair. They're doing the same thing the Chiefs are. That's a game you should not win.
Yeah.
In no scenario should you win that game. I looked this up yesterday, Alex. The Lions had 345 total yards in that game and 5 interceptions. The last 36 times that a team in the NFL during a regular season game had less than 350 yards and 5 turnovers in a game, one was 2000. It's been 24 years since a team won a game the way that the Lions did yesterday. And they find ways to win, dude. That is a skill. Now, it also requires the other team to implode, and the Texans were a more than willing participant in that regard. But the Lions continue to find new ways to win, and I will give full credit where it is due. That, to me, they are either the best or the second best team in the NFL right now. I think there's a clear top 2 favorites to get to the Super Bowl in each respective conference.
I just don't know another team that has all of the threats that they have. Now you're seeing Laporta get more involved. You know the downfield threats that you've got. Amon-Ra St. Brown's able to get any first down you ask him. But, man, watching Jahmyr Gibbs dominate that game, and that was actually a bad night for him. But he changed the outcome of that fourth quarter because he was able to drive them down the field. They should be a scary team. But on the Texan side, I'm done with them. I don't know if it's a sophomore slump. I still think C.J. Stroud's going to be an awesome quarterback. But that team defense last year was supposed to be awesome. D'Amico Ryans had them just flying on all cylinders, and they have been awful this year with upgrades that they made in the offseason.
Yeah, I think I agree on the Lions part. For me, with the Texans, I think teams figured out Stroud and figured out that offense. I mean, Stroud's thrown for 300-plus yards twice this season, and one of those was against Jacksonville. Let's not even count that game.
It's fake.
I look at him and I say, man, he doesn't look like the same quarterback. And I don't know if it's because of the offensive line and he's getting kind of skittish in the pocket, and maybe that is it. And if you upgrade the offensive line, he'll be fine. But I'm kind of starting to wonder. I'm not saying that C.J. Stroud's not a top 10 quarterback, but he's definitely not top 5. And that's where we thought maybe he'd be going into the NFL season. I'm now a little bit more down on Stroud because, yes, some of the offensive struggles are the offensive line. Yeah, they're dealing with injuries. Hey, man, the best quarterbacks lift up the guys around him. I'm not seeing that from Stroud.
I think that we need to, at this point, take some stock on where we are with some of these quarterbacks and realize it's really freaking hard to elevate those around you when your offensive line is struggling the way that the Texans has. Like, we've seen this with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. There have been times over the last couple of seasons where he has not played very well. Some of that's injury. A lot of it's the offensive line. Like, we've seen this with Justin Herbert at times in the past. I think Justin Herbert's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. And he's playing really well right now. And that's because he's finally got an offensive line and a coach that knows what the hell he's doing. And I think when you look at C.J. Stroud, top 5 quarterback in the league to me still. And he's going through it right now. It's not an easy stretch for him. I think the same thing is true for Jordan Love. I think this is something that I'm going to extend a little bit of grace to Caleb Williams to as well. And it's what I want to get to next. I'm not sure there's a more disappointing team in the NFL this season than the Chicago Bears. Losing that game yesterday, they could have fired everybody today and I would have understood it. That offense coordinator got to go. Their head coach, Matt Eberflus, was on 670 The Score earlier this morning in Chicago. I don't know if you guys saw this. His phone dropped 3 separate times. The cell service went out. Or no, not 670 The Score, ESPN 1000, because he was on with Cap.
Oh, that's why it dropped.
And Cap said the offense was better yesterday than his cell service was this morning. Caleb Williams was 16 for 30 for 120 yards. He took 51 yards in sacks. So if you look at the net passing yards that they had in that game, it was 69 for the entirety of the game against the New England freaking Patriots.
Yeah.
Alex, what do you make of where the Bears are at? Caleb Williams' struggles this year. What do you make of this?
I mean, it tells you that they've got a lot of growing pains to get through. I was thinking the same lines that you were. That's a game that you fire everybody. Like, that's kind of what happened with the Saints when they lost to the Panthers. And I know the Patriots aren't that bad, but that's a game you fire everybody because offensively, this was supposed to be one of the more gifted teams in the NFC this season. You're talking about Keenan Allen, who has just been a ghost this season for them. Rome Odunze has not been effective, and DJ Moore is not what he was last year with Justin Fields. I'm not going to blame Caleb Williams because that offensive line is really bad right now, but you also have to find a way to make plays regardless. We saw C.J. Stroud find ways to make plays last year when everything else around him wasn't great, so you're going to have to do an overhaul of that team. You've got the quarterback, you've got the weapons on offense, and you've got a defense that keeps you in football games. You need to fix the offensive line and find better play callers.
Yeah, I think you need a new coach. I think they've got a bad coach. And I think it's time for them to acknowledge that. For this to be the response over the last 2 weeks against Arizona and New England after that atrocious loss on the road against Washington where you benched Tyreek Stevens, I think you've seen now the leadership's just not in place there. And Caleb has to eat some of that. Caleb should have been one of the leaders on the team. He's also a rookie. It's really freaking hard to go into a locker room and just immediately take over. Being a rookie in general is extremely hard. Most rookies stink. So I don't think this is all on him, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. You guys want to hear the rest of their schedule this year?
Oh, it's brutal.
Green Bay twice. Minnesota twice. The Lions twice. San Francisco, Seattle.
Oh, cool. So you're going 0-8.
There's a real chance that this team finishes 4-13. A real chance with an 11-game losing streak to finish out the season. So
that's how you get fired.
Thoughts and prayers to all the Bears fans out there. All right, last thing here.
Nah, I don't like that.
Worth it.
I hate Chicago.
You guys like watching that yesterday with the Chiefs?
No, it was like watching paint dry.
That was fun? You liked it?
Did you like that?
Actually, yes.
Oh, God.
Because it was one of the most improbable ways to win that I've ever seen from the Chiefs. Like, in this entire stretch of the winning window that they've had since 2018 with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback, I've never seen them win that specific way. I've seen them some wild stuff where Patrick Mahomes pulls a rabbit out of his hat. I remember against the Denver Broncos, this is what I think is in his first season as a starter. He's drifting away from Von Miller, who's chasing him in the on a scramble drill. He moves the ball from his right hand because he's rolling to his left and throws it with his left hand to pick up a first down on what I believe was a 3rd and 6 or something. It's like, that's a way that they've beaten this team. I've never seen them win when the other team clearly has the victory ready to go, a short chip shot field goal with time expiring, and then they block the field goal. That was unbelievable, man. And so I'm ready to have the conversation. If they beat the Bills this upcoming weekend, that will be the first time where, in earnest, I am ready to talk about the possibility of them going undefeated. I don't think they're gonna do it because I don't think they're gonna care enough about it. I think they're gonna care more about winning the Super Bowl. But If you beat Buffalo, your remaining schedule, Carolina, the Raiders, Chargers at home, the Browns, Texans, Steelers, Broncos. I don't know, man. It's at least on the table.
How'd they get that schedule? Aren't they the first place team?
Yeah, because they had the tough part of it already. They've already beaten Baltimore, Cincy, Atlanta, the Chargers on the road, San Francisco, Tampa. Like, the Chiefs have played a top 5 schedule in the NFL based on difficulty so far this year, and they're 9-0.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes got outplayed by Bo Nix in that game, and they still found a way to win. That should tell you
1 for 5, I think, in the red zone in that one. 1 for 4.
No, I give Denver a lot of credit. I slept on them early on, but their defense is awesome, and they're going to be a threat because of it. But, like, every element of that Kansas City Chiefs game was awful. They weren't moving the ball at all. Running game was just non-existent. Your defense won against their defense. And
dude, the funny thing is they threw the ball pretty well in that game. They just didn't run it.
Yeah.
And then when they got into the red zone, they stalled every single time.
Couldn't
they
get
kicked
there.
multiple field goals from inside of the 10-yard line, and then they found a way.
Special teams won you that game. That's what we're talking about right now.
How do we get pancaked on a game-winning field goal? What's going on, Denver?
Dude, Leo Chanel is an absolute beast.
Oh, it was unbelievable. The funny thing was, I expected him to miss the field goal because I knew the Chiefs, it was just going to go their way somehow. I didn't expect him to pancake the guy on the left side of the O-line and then block the freaking thing. I'm sick and tired of talking about this team. I hate them so much.
I'm rooting for undefeated.
I want them to lose so bad.
I think it's going to be fun.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. BK, you could have had season tickets for however long ago, but it doesn't mean that you actually cared about the team. It's easy to claim your hometown team when they're good. You're unbearable.
Yeah.
You and Nick Wright don't care much about them until 2018, and that's a fact.
Yeah.
You're just like every other Chiefs fan. Total fraud.
That's a text line fact right there.
You're trash.
Honestly, I'm just rooting for it now. I just want to see what it looks like.
The frustrating part is, like, Mahomes, I don't think he's played really well at all for most of these 9 wins so far this year. And the funny thing is when they get to the playoffs, you know why they're going to win? Because of him. It's unbelievable.
And Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's been like...
He's actually been solid this year.
The last couple of weeks he's been good, but like the first 8 games, it was like, where's Travis Kelce? He'll open up at the end of the season. Isaiah Pacheco will come back and then be like, oh, remember me?
Hate this team.
In 2007, I watched the Chiefs team that trotted out there Damon Heward, Brody Croyle, and Tyler Thigpen as their starting quarterbacks. They finished that They finished that season 4-12 with the 31st best offense in the NFL.
Yeah, we know you weren't watching then.
Yeah, you're a fraud.
You were watching the Royals.
Up until Tyreek Hill, the best receiver in franchise history, had played like 30 years prior to me being born. Prior to the forward pass really being what it is today in the NFL. So, with all due respect, sir or madam, I've earned this.
Nah, you're trash.
I deserve, just like Blues fans earned 2019, because when you go through all that crap, dude, you earned that. I've earned this as a Chiefs fan.
Now, you earned 1 Super Bowl.
You got one.
You know what?
You didn't earn this
Us
run.
Blues fans are in a retour right now. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, this is trash.
Oh, Brody Croyle, man. Tyler Thigpen. Palco.
That sounds like guys you created like in Madden.
Damon Heward.
It's like a creative player. I want to be a football player.
The Chiefs really went to the playoffs with Trent Green as their quarterback, but he had been concussed earlier in the season, and so they went into the playoffs against the Indianapolis Colts. And Damon Heward started the game. Despite Green being ready to go, they said, yeah, no, Damon Heward's our quarterback now. He's our guy. Herm Edwards. And they put him out there, and you know how many first downs they had in the first half?
0.
You know how many times they crossed the midfield?
0.
The midfield. That's how bad it was. You know how many times they crossed the midfield?
So, yeah.
Again,
eat it, Texter.
Again,
eat it.
You earned it
Enjoy
for 1 year.
all of this.
You earned 1 Super Bowl.
They're
not
9-0.
like 3
They've won
and 4.
3 of the last 4 Super Bowls, 2 straight. They're going to win another this year. Eat it.
There was the BKO. We were waiting for it.
I hope St. Louis hates the Chiefs as much as I do.
I've earned this.
I say that wearing my Ram shirt today.
I'm rooting for it a little bit.
T-Bone's such a fraud. Coming up next, questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers with Alex and T-Bone on BK. This one comes from the 636. Alex, do you think the Blues should elevate Matt Kessel to the second pair and just, quote, deal with Joseph and Perunovic as the third pair to try to limit them to 10 minutes a night?
No. I don't think Matt Kessel has had a great season. He's been fine, but I don't think he's had this overwhelming where he should be playing 20 minutes a night. And two, you don't want to put him on his offhand. I know you can move Falk over there. I think Falk's had a good season. No, I would keep it as is. Nick Leddy is still not skating with the team, so this could still be a while before you see him back. You're just going to see a lot of Scott Perunovic and Matt Kessel. They played 17 minutes in that game against Washington, and I didn't think they were the worst defensive pair out there. So, no, I would not do that.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. If Jim Montgomery were let go of Boston, do you think that he would have a chance to be the next Blues coach?
I think there would be interest on both sides. If he gets let go in season, which I don't expect Boston to do. Like Boston, even though they're bad,
back to third in the division.
I mean Boston because the Eastern Conference is like you've got 4 or 5 great teams and then everyone else, they're going to float around the playoff spot. But if they underwhelm this season, could be an off-season move. The question is, does Jim Montgomery want to get back into coaching right away? But if he's available, I would almost guarantee there's going to be interest on either side because there was last year.
The Bruins have 16 points. The Stars have 16 points. They're both in third in their respective divisions. They would be fifth if they were in the other division in their own respective conferences. Mm-hmm. It's a weird year. Yeah. A lot of the best teams are consolidated into the Metro and the Pacific.
The concerning part is Boston's minus 12 in goal differential. And we talk a lot about this. That goal differential plus or minus dictates if you're a playoff team or not.
They have a worse goal differential than the Detroit Red Wings or the Columbus Blue Jackets. Mm-hmm. Not what you want at this point in the season. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from Marty Monogamy. Marty Monogamy. Easy for you to say.
What happened?
Take two. I apologize. I'm playing hurt today, guys. I'm getting Would the Cardinals be better off signing Travis d'Arnaud and trading Ivan Herrera and then waiting a year or so on Jimmy Crooks? I don't believe so. I don't think there's any reason to sign Travis d'Arnaud. If you're going to do that, just go keep Contreras behind the plate and trade Ivan Herrera. I just would keep Ivan Herrera, use him as my starting catcher 2 out of the 3 days, Pages as my backup, and then I know we get very excited about prospects, and Jimmy Crooks might end up being amazing. Sounds like he's a really good prospect for the Cardinals. I just always think we do this thing where we're trying to push the prospects and push them. It might be 2 years, 3 years before Jimmy Crooks is a good major leaguer. So let these guys play it out, see where you're at, and then if Jimmy Crooks pushes his way onto the team, you do what you did with Andrew Kisner or with Carson Kelly. You move on from those guys as you have somebody else that's clearly shown they're ready to take over the job. So I would not do that, no.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, I think Herrera, we've talked about this, I wouldn't trade him. I think he's one that would get away from you. Look, his defense may not be the best behind the plate, but I would think you can work on a throwing program this offseason, make that better. And if that's the case, hopefully bump up his caught stealing numbers. And guys, he hit 300 last year. You know what d'Arnaud's never done in his career? Hit 300. And look, batting average isn't the end-all, be-all, but I think Herrera's going to start to show even more power. And he started to show that in the back half of last year, the games that nobody was watching because they didn't matter at that point. But he started to hit for some power. I think that he's one that you would look back on and say, well, we regret trading
I touched
him.
my mic.
Seriously, would you?
I gotta stop. I didn't do anything. I'm trying to get closer to my mouth. That's on me.
No, we
Just
don't.
lean in.
Yeah.
All right, from the 314.
Lean in for a kiss.
T-Bone, you're going to have to sit this one out.
Oh.
In the 90s, I understand.
Oh, sorry, T-Bone.
I'll go back to what I was working on.
Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann were the best co-hosts on SportsCenter. Who do you think has gone on to have the better post-SportsCenter career? I would go with Dan Patrick.
Dan Patrick.
Keith Olbermann, first of all, if we're talking about who's been more likable, definitely Dan Patrick. Keith Olbermann is a controversial figure, to put it mildly. And I personally, if you told me, hey, you can have one of these two respective careers, which one would you rather have? I would take Dan Patrick's, given what he's been able to build on his own. It's very rare that somebody leaves ESPN and creates a radio show on their own that continues to be successful. It doesn't happen very often, unless you're, I don't know, Colin Cowherd and you go to FS1, right? That's a different story entirely. But Dan Patrick basically became an independent entity and built this thing up from the ground. So, yeah, I'll take Dan Patrick's career.
And he's been in like every single Adam Sandler movie since he left ESPN. So I'll take the movie star on top of being a sports talk star.
Yep. And Olbermann, the one thing that I would like, I would definitely want to masquerade in politics talk. So, you know, I would take that. That part of
Come on, man.
Olbermann's career.
We're past it now. It was last week. You don't need to get political anymore.
You think that's just going to be over now?
Yeah, you don't need to get political anymore. Why you always got to bring that up, man?
It probably won't be part of the news much anymore.
Why you always, dude?
Right.
Just stick it to your podcast, okay?
We'll get to that on the politics and theology podcast that we're going to do.
No one would ever listen to the show again if we had a politics pod.
Solely because BK's hosting.
I don't know. I think people might be interested in our politics takes, but we're not going to do that here. Coming up in 15 minutes,
Stay
time
out
for
of it,
in
Tanner.
or out. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for in or out. I listened to Tim's questions from the audience the other day. He gets into some of that stuff. So, you know.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, well, you and Tim should team up then for that.
Maybe I'll invite myself onto Tim's podcast one of these days. And we
You
can
would
talk
invite
a little
yourself.
The only difference is he actually
BK
does
would
the
like
podcast.
walk into the room. Oh, you doing something? Oh, I had no idea.
Oh, well, I don't want to get political, but...
Yeah, here's my thoughts.
You'll talk about Trump's first 100 days. Let's talk about it.
And there it is.
Coming up next, how many SEC teams can realistically get into the college football playoff? We did a little bit of breakdown earlier today. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. All right, so after the game, Eli Drinkwitz lost his mind, Alex.
Good.
He's getting interviewed by Cole Kubelik on SEC Network, and Eli Drinkwitz, this crazy final 3 minutes. They had combined for like 20 points in the first 57 minutes of the game, and then boom, 28 points in the last 3 minutes. And Eli Drinkwitz asked a question, and he gives an honest answer. Here's Eli after the game on Saturday.
What does this do for your football team moving forward? I know you know about your team. You know about their demeanor. What does this do for you moving forward from now?
It gives us another win, keeps us in the playoff hunt. That's right, I said it, playoff hunt. M-I-Z.
All right, Eli, why don't you run back to your room like Mike McDaniel away from the camera after that bold statement?
He's not wrong.
Oh, okay. Here
in the
we
most
go.
technical of senses, Missouri is still alive in the playoff. But it's real dicey. Like, if we had to put a percentage on Mizzou's chances of getting into the college football playoff this year, I would put it at like 5%.
I was thinking like 2 or 3%.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. I think I saw on the broadcast they said it's like 60% if Mizzou wins out, which feels high to me. Like, even if they go 10-2, I'm not sure I would go up to 60%. I would put it at a 40% chance. I would say it's more likely they don't get in than they do, even if they were to win out the rest of the way, which I view as highly unlikely. They've got South Carolina on the road this week. South Carolina is one of the hottest teams in college football. They've got an unbelievable defensive line, a really solid quarterback, and they do a lot of the things that can give Missouri trouble. So you kind of have to suspend all reality when you're talking about this, but
Drew Pine's one of the hottest quarterbacs right now in the SEC.
Sure. If you just take the count the
His
last
fourth
3 minutes
quarter.
and ignore the previous 30 plus 55, 85 minutes of performance, yeah,
I am recency bias, and I saw a dude light it up for 3 minutes.
All right, so let's go through this. What is the path, right? If Missouri were to get into the college football playoff, how does it happen?
Let me tell you, this was tough math.
I think
in the
we should
office
cue
earlier.
music on this one.
Yeah, like the fight song. The ACC, we all agree, is a one-bid league, right? It's going to be either Clemson or Miami.
Yeah.
You guys agree with that?
Which I think it's just going to be Miami. But
All right. The Big 12. I think it's overwhelmingly likely it's a one-bid league. The most likely scenario right now is BYU, and, man, they are the luckiest team in the country.
Yeah.
I can't believe they're still undefeated, but somehow they are, and you don't have to apologize for your wins, even though after the game on Saturday, Utah's athletic director came out and said that was embarrassing, and we're going to be talking to the conference about it.
Yeah, well, he's now short $400,000.
Worth noting, BYU is only a 2.5-point favorite at home against Kansas next week. So to say Vegas doesn't believe in them would be an understatement. So one bid from the Big 12. The Big 10, I think it's very likely you get 4. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. Do you guys disagree with any of that? Do you think there will be more, less, or does 4 feel like the right number to you?
4 feels like the right number. I don't know if anybody else falls into that category with those 3, because the 3 that came to mind immediately was Indiana, Oregon, and Boise State, and Penn State has been awesome.
I think it's 4. I think the only way it gets to 3 is if Ohio State somehow loses to Indiana. And then if they do, well, even then, they wouldn't get
They
to the
lost to
conference
Georgia,
championship game,
or they lost to Oregon and Indiana,
yeah,
so you'd still
I would
be
say
in.
it's probably 4. I was thinking in my head they would get to the title game, and then if they lost, they'd get screwed with a 3rd loss, but I don't think that's the case.
It'd be really hard for them to get in. Yeah. All right, so 4 from the Big 10. There will be one group of 5 team. Could be Boise, could be Army. There's a few different teams that could potentially have that spot, but one group of 5 team will get in. Next one, I think Notre Dame's likely to get in. That's the one that Missouri fans should be watching. Because Notre Dame really determines, because I think the rest of this is pretty much set. It sounds crazy. Like, we don't know the exact teams because we don't know who it's going to be from the Big 12 or the ACC or the group of 5 team. But we know pretty much those are going to be one-bid leagues. Notre Dame is the one that changes things. If Notre Dame loses against Army or loses against Army and USC, which sounds crazy, but USC at home has actually been pretty good this year, and they've been a little feisty. They're not a good team, but I'm not sure Notre Dame's a great team either. So we'll see on that one. They're the team that Missouri fans need to watch. They don't have a great resume. They do have the win that you don't have, which is against Texas A&M on the road week 1. That is going to carry them. But other than that, they don't have a lot of great wins on their resume, and they do have a terrible loss against Northern Illinois. So if they have the Northern Illinois loss and they lose to one of Army or USC, now you're talking about comparable resumes, and we'll see. Now you just take your chances if you're Mizzou. But the hope would be, hey, SEC next to your name, Big win against South Carolina down the stretch, playing well. One of the losses is because you had your backup quarterback in. There's some context there. Maybe the committee looks at you and says, we prefer Mizzou's resume over Notre Dame's. The reason why I bring that up, with Notre Dame in, the SEC only has 4 spots. If they're out, the SEC could get to 5. And boy, howdy, do you have a lot of options. Teams that are technically still alive in the SEC right now. Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, A&M, and technically, I guess you could say, South Carolina, LSU, Missouri. I think it's unlikely that South Carolina or LSU is in, but I think there are 7 teams that still have a real possibility of getting into the college football playoff. Mizzou fans, you should be rooting for Texas, Tennessee, and Bama. You just want them in, concede those spots. I think you can make an argument. You also want Ole Miss in, so that's 4. And then you would be battling at this point against a potential 9-3 A&M team, 9-3 Georgia team, 9-3 LSU team, and a 9-3 at this point, or a 10-2, I guess, would be possible as well, Notre Dame team. That's your path. If you're confused right now, that's because it's hard.
Like Charlie Day right now.
I gave you all of the scenarios that have to take place. It's incredibly unlikely that all of that happens. So all of that is to say, Mizzou needs to win out, and they need some help.
Yeah, well, and I was just going to ask, with those other 19 SEC teams that are realistically still alive, how many of those have those top 25 wins? Because isn't that what's against Mizzou right now?
Yeah, that's what's hurting them is top 25 wins.
Because even if you beat South Carolina and Arkansas, you still don't have a top 25 win with the exception of Boston College.
Yeah, South Carolina right now is a top 25 team, but they would drop out most likely if you end up beating them. So that's kind of the name of the game, is if you win, these teams end up looking worse on your schedule. Like that's going to be something that hurts them. When you're looking at their resume compared to Georgia, for example. Georgia would be 9-3 in the scenario that I laid out. And their best win on the season would be probably Clemson and Texas. So they'd have 2 big wins on their resume. Their 3 losses at Alabama, at Ole Miss, and possibly at home against Tennessee. So what do you weigh more? Do you weigh more heavily the fact that they've got the quality wins that Missouri does not have on its resume? Or, hey man, they're 9-3 and you're 10-2. I don't know. I don't know how the committee would end up looking at that. It's possible they would just side on the, hey, Georgia's a better team when you look at them. When you look at the resume, they've got better wins. Totally in play that they would pick Georgia over Mizzou, and I wouldn't necessarily blame them for that.
Yeah, that's why it just feels like you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, because if it comes down to it, you with like 3 other SEC teams and they look at their record, like you just said, sure, you can make the argument for you had a backup quarterback, that game you were close with it, but it's still the end result, and you wonder if Georgia
Texas
has
A&M, right? Let's look at Texas A&M's resume. Their best win on the season is against you. Hard to say that they shouldn't get in at 9-3 over you at 10-2 when they didn't just beat you. They kicked your ass 41-10 at home. But they lost last week against South Carolina on the road, the same team that Missouri could potentially go on the road against this week and beat. That's what has to happen for this to even be a conversation. And they would potentially have another loss against Texas down the stretch. It's not an easy path. Like, me trying to sell you on this is not simple. And that's why I don't believe that it's reasonable to expect this. And honestly, I think if Mizzou fans get their hopes up too much about it, it just makes the rest of the way kind of feel miserable. So just get to 10 wins, man. Get to 10 wins, and everything else pretty much takes care of itself. And if you don't get in, it's because they didn't take care of business against Texas A&M earlier this year.
Yeah, I think when you look at their schedule, I think you either need Georgia to lose out, but even then, I would put a 3-loss Georgia team into the college football playoff over Missouri. You know, that game against Tennessee, even if they lose that game, they've still got 2 really big wins, including one against Texas, who I think is like a top 5 team in the country. Yep. To me, it's Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the one that can potentially determine, to me, even allows this to be a conversation.
Agreed.
Because I think the committee's going to look at the big wins more than they are the big losses. I mean, I'm shocked that they're in the top 12.
If Notre Dame gets in, you're done.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Because you only get 4 in the SEC, and those 4 teams will be Texas, Tennessee, Bama, Ole Miss, unless something unforeseen happens. Like, Ole Miss has Florida and Mississippi State the rest of the way.
They're not losing.
They're not losing those games. Shouldn't, at least. Bama has Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn. They should win out. Tennessee at Georgia, that's not going to be easy, but even if they lose that one, they've still got 2 losses on the season. UTEP and Vandy. So you would need them to lose to Georgia and Vandy to get to 9-3 on the season. Maybe then that becomes a conversation. And then Texas has Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas A&M. Even if they lose that Texas A&M game, boom, you're still 11-1. You're getting into the college football playoff in that scenario. So you kind of need, if you're Mizzou, somebody to get into the SEC championship with 2 losses and then to lose in that game to get them to 3, and maybe that knocks them out. But even then, I'm not sure that's enough. Somebody on the text line said, guys, look at Florida State last year. That's your example of what the College Football Playoff Committee looks like. They're looking for the biggest schools and the biggest brands, not necessarily the best teams. We got to remember, Florida State last year lost their starting quarterback at the end of the season, and that was a part of it as well. If Mizzou lost Brady Cook like week 11, I think that would be taken into account, and they would have to look at that and say, well, if you don't have Brady Cook, you're not the same team, and then there's 0 chance that Mizzou would get in. That's not the scenario they're in, though.
Yeah, I do wonder how they will look at a win, like to your point on the South Carolina game, where Texas A&M loses to South Carolina. How do they look at that if Drew Pine's the guy that leads Missouri to that spot? You know, because then there's the argument, but I always look at head-to-head. I think head-to-head's more important than kind of the comparisons of a schedule. I can look at the schedule for Mizzou and just say right away, hey, they lost to A&M. And not only lost, to your point, they got the crap kicked out of them. So I think even like a 3-loss A&M team, even if you beat South Carolina with your backup quarterback, which should give you more roses with the committee, I think they're still going to look at it and say, hey, head-to-head's more important than what it is when we're comparing schedules and how you did against a common opponent.
No doubt. I think Eli Drinkwitz had to say that after the game. I think it was smart.
100%.
Well, yeah.
It was the smart thing to do. It's smart for your team because you inspire confidence within the team. Like, they got to be pulling for something, right? You got to play for something down the stretch. That's also, earlier today, I said that's one of the most important wins in the Eli Drinkwitz era. That's also why. Because now everybody continues to push in the same direction. You got South Carolina next week. That now becomes a huge game for Mizzou. And you could sell it as such. If you lost that game, season's over. Like, there's really nothing left to play for in any
a good bowl
meaningful
game.
So that was a big part of that. And also, just why not sell it to your fan base? You've got some fans that will listen to us right now and be like, it's possible. Even if it's 5% of your fan base, which is roughly equal to the chances that Mizzou makes the college football playoff this year. That's a segment of your fan base that now buys in even more. And if you continue winning down the stretch, they'll say, why not us? And then they turn against the College Football Playoff Committee instead of turning against the coach. It's a smart way to build your fan base up. I have no problem with Eli Drinkwitz saying that after the game. I think it was really smart in terms of PR. He's, generally speaking, pretty good at that stuff. I don't see a very easy path for them to be able to get in.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about the chance of 5 SEC teams getting in. If we're looking at 4, it realistically feels like it is the longest of long shots when you look at the 4 SEC teams that are already in. And if you're relying on 3 or 4 other teams to just fall flat on their face down the stretch, and you have to win out, that's why I put it at like 1% chance if this team gets in.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, that's what they always say.
Looking through this, though, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 teams that at least have a 1% chance to get in. Pretty damn good year by the SEC, man. I don't think any of these teams are elite the way that we've seen in the past, where like Georgia or Bama has just been the dominant team in the conference, and then they kind of carry everybody else with them. The SEC pretty clearly has regained its spot this year as the top conference in America, though. Yeah. The Big Ten, I think, has kind of taken over that mantle of we've got the dominant teams. They do have Oregon and Ohio State, and if you want to throw Penn State in there as well, I'm fine with that. 3 of the top 5 teams in the country. The SEC just has like everything from 5 to 30. It kind of nailed down right now. So I do think the SEC has returned to form in that regard. They are the deepest conference in America right now. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, how much of the Blues struggles can be blamed right now on injuries, and how much of it is about the core? We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. In or out, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, in or out, we will see the New York Giants select number 1 overall in the NFL draft, move on from Daniel Jones, and take a quarterback with the number 1 overall selection this year. Right now, they're selecting second, but they're tied with the Jaguars, both at 2 and 8.
Yeah. I'm going to say in because if you're the Giants, you're going to be picking first overall.
You guys like any of these quarterbacks?
No. I mean, Sanders maybe, but I don't really know if I like Sanders in the Giants system.
Yeah, I say Shador's like the best quarterback, and
I guess.
Yeah.
You have to take him, though, if you're the Giants, because you can't keep running it back with Daniel Jones.
I will say in as well. I think they will finish with the worst record, at least draft a quarterback, and move on from Daniel Jones. I mean, man, he was terrible in that game in Germany over the weekend, and he's been bad all season long. The fact that they kind of got themselves stuck into this situation with him when they gave him the contract, BK was right all along. It never made sense to pay Daniel Jones, even after his one good season. It was unbelievable. So, yeah, I'm in on this one.
Would have paid Saquon over Daniel Jones.
Here are the Pro Football Focus top quarterbacks in this year's class. You guys ready?
All right.
Their rankings. At number 5 in the class, Jalen Milroe.
Oh.
At number 15 in the class, Cam Ward, who just lost this past weekend and fumbled the game away. At number 21 in the class, Shador Sanders. At number 53 in the class, Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback. I actually really like him. I'm not sure he's ready, though. At number 59, Carson Beck, who's thrown 100 interceptions this year. Don't check on the math on that, but I'm pretty sure that's close to being accurate. 61, Quinn Ewers, second best quarterback on his own team. 76, Miller Moss, the quarterback from USC, who I kind of want to be the quarterback at Mizzou next year. And at 79, Connor Wigman,
Drew Pine away,
who's been benched on his own team like 5 different times this year for Texas A&M.
Where's Brady Cook on that list? Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling.
175.
7th round pick by somebody, maybe?
DJ Uyunglele at 213 for
Surely nobody drafts him.
In or out, Brady Cook goes before DJ Uy.
They have Dylan Gabriel at 155. That seems low. I like Dylan Gabriel.
That does seem low.
I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but I think he could be a long-term backup, like 3rd round pick.
It seems
he
really
would be
low
like the guy that, you know who should draft him and make him their backup? Because I think he'd fit perfectly. It's not because he's left-handed. Miami.
Yeah.
I could totally see where he could work in that Mike McDaniel
that
offense.
Seems really low
well.
for one of the best quarterbacks right now in the game.
Anyways, I'm out. I do not think there's a quarterback worth taking number 1 overall, and I think they will end up going with somebody via trade, free agency, something like that.
I've seen these teams reach on quarterbacks so often. I know they're going to.
And Brian Dable's desperate right now. Just give me something.
Them, would you rather reach on one of those quarterbacks or take Travis Hunter and be like, we got Travis Hunter. We'll figure it out.
I think they would reach. Because I think
really.
What's
if you're
his
the
name?
Giants, though, you get Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors.
Joe Schoen.
Thank you. Or whatever his name is. He knows like his job's on the line. Like he knows he's not getting 5 years to. Okay, well we'll pass a year. We'll see what next year's class looks like. He's like, okay, I got to win now. So what position is most important? It's quarterback. And my guess is he's going to end up reaching on a guy like that. I know. But we've seen that before. We've seen that before where quarterbacks go, like 5 of them go in the top 20. You look at it and go, wait, that guy should be like a 3rd round pick. They'll reach.
If you're the Giants, just suck one more year, take Travis Hunter, get a quarterback the next year, and hopefully there'll be better options.
Who's the quarterback next year?
I'm just saying, hopefully.
I was thinking of this yesterday or Saturday while watching some of these games. Who's going to be the face of college football next year? Like, I truly don't know because it's not – because, like, right now it's kind of Hunter. It's Sanders is there.
It'll be Manning.
That's probably it. He'll probably be the guy. But outside of that, there's like a whole lot of –
I think Aller's going to come back for Penn State, and he might be as well.
Maybe. I think that wide receiver for Alabama could get up there.
Oh, Ryan Williams. Yeah. The two freshman receivers, one at Ohio State, one at
I also
Alabama.
think you're getting to the point where coaches are starting to be
to Mizzou.
The coaches are going to start being the face of
Mason
franchises.
Moss and
yeah, you're
Ryan
really
Wingo.
reaching, hoping that those happen.
Well, you're going to put expectations on again when they win 10 games, miss a playoff. BK's going to be over there. Well,
it was a good season.
Alex, what do you got?
In or out? We see Dalibor Dvorsky by December 1st.
Out. No reason to call him up for this. Unless
6
he's
goals,
100% ready.
10 points in 13 games.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Say that again?
6 goals, 10 points in 13 games, and is only a -1.
That's not bad. A minus with those numbers?
And that team's been bad, so to just be a -1, they would get up like 7 or 8 goals a game. So
he
really,
must have been on a tear
different
because he got off to a little bit of a slow start, no?
Yeah, he's had a couple of games where he scored 2 goals in it.
All right.
You want to change your answer?
No, but I like that. He leads the team in score. Oh, how about Nikita Alexandrov?
No, let's not go down that road.
4
again.
goals, 4 assists, a +2.
I'll tell you who's also been...
Dylan Peterson.
Why do we have that guy in the press box last year?
Dylan Peterson's been good. I'll tell you the other one, that Alex Santeri-Kaskamaki, who I believe he injured.
You with this guy, dude. If you bring him up one more time.
He scored 6 points in the last 3 games. I'll take that as a
just a
third or
hot
fourth
streak.
line guy.
They've got 100 of those.
Obviously, they're still in search of him right now.
I will say out, but I do think you will see him post-Winter Classic.
Dylan Peterson
When
has
exactly, I don't know.
31 penalty minutes.
Yeah, my man's going
Is he
around
fighting everybody?
Yeah, he's had like 3 or 4 fights, I think, so far this season.
Hey, man, CHL, we got to entertain somehow.
He's just standing in front of the net and then dropping the mitts with somebody when he needs to. I'm actually, and I'm considering in on this, but I think I'm going to say out. My only hesitation is like if he's performing, you at least give it a look, and if it doesn't look good, you send him back. December's quick, though. I think there's so many Blues fans that are saying, bring him up, bring him up. Man, you don't want to put him in this spot right now where it's like, we need help, and then he comes up and doesn't work, and then everyone's talking about him. I'm going to say
puts him in
out.
the press box with Bull Dude.
Yeah, you probably wait till like, I think post-trade deadline is when you see Dalibor Dvorsky.
Agreed. T-Bone?
Guys, in or out? Bill Belichick will be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and he'll be making the GM decisions as well.
Out.
Wow.
You're sure as hell not going to get him to have the GM decisions.
You had me at least
Jerry's
interested.
getting senile, man.
No, he's not.
and he still believes he can
Talking
fix
about
it.
the sun.
He's not going to be the coach of the Cowboys next year. No chance.
He'll be
Is
a
he gonna
coach
be a
next
coach
year.
next
Yeah,
year?
I think so.
Where?
I gotta wait to find out who else is
Because I don't think it's going to be Chicago.
fired.
New
No,
England.
New England.
That would be awesome.
Can you imagine? They're like, we got a quarterback in here. Come on, Bill. Let's go. We made a mistake.
Do
We're
the
sorry.
Jets call him?
No, he will never take that job.
I guess that's true.
He hates the Jets more than anything in the entire
If you
world.
fire McDaniel,
He won't
maybe
take
the
that.
Dolphins.
The funny thing is, the best fits are probably teams that he's not going to take their job.
Well, when Nick Sirianni
He's not
goes,
gonna go
maybe Philly
coach
calls.
for the Bengals.
Would he coach Philly? The owner doesn't like him, though, so
Yeah, I
I
guess that's
can't
true.
see.
I mean, I don't think Philly's firing Nick Sirianni. They're 7-2, man.
Give it time.
I'm with you. I think he's going to screw this thing up. I don't think they're going to fire him, though. Vegas has a partial owner in Tom Brady now.
Bill Belichick joins and then Brady comes out of retirement.
Couldn't you guys kind of see it as the tie-in?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think Brady would hire him. I don't know how much he really has say, because he's like a 5 or 10% owner. One
about
team that would be
Chicago?
interesting. I don't think reading Mike Sando, friend of the show, his piece today. It sounds like Chicago wants young coaches. They don't want someone that's experienced.
Bill Belichick's old in his mind, or young
Does
in
that
his
mean
mind.
experience or cheap?
Yes.
Okay.
A fun one, and I could totally see it because we've talked about how their owner's crazy. I could see where Indy maybe makes that move, but I don't know if he'd want Richardson.
No, I can't see that.
He could look at Flacco though.
Jacksonville, because he's got Mac Jones again. Can win with Mac.
I could see him taking that job.
Jacksonville with Lawrence, maybe.
I could see that.
Mac.
You believe that you've got a franchise quarterback. It's a semi-winnable division. I could see that. Jacksonville feels like the one that is.
He's in Florida.
And you know their owner's going to want to make a splash. So that's probably the one. All right. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we're in or out here on BK and Ferrario. We'll get to a couple of these. Alex, in or out, Ovi will pass Gretzky this season.
And we were doing the math, JR and I, on Saturday, because he scored, of course, 2 goals, and the Blues played them in 43 games, I believe. Like, you would have to go on like a goal per game standard between now and then, but there's a realistic shot he could be chasing that milestone against the Blues when they play again in February, but he breaks it this
32
season.
32 to break the record.
Yeah.
31 to tie it, 32 to break.
He breaks it this season.
Yeah, I'll say, and he looked really good in the game against the Blues. Now, granted, the whole team did for Washington, but I'll say in. For some reason, like watching him last year, and maybe it was just like one game against the Blues, I felt like he looked the age. You know, he looked kind of old, looked kind of slow, and I was like, okay, he's still probably going to break it because he's got the contract and he'll play. This year, though, he looks better.
They revamped that roster for him. I mean, like last year, they were a bad team. This year, they went out we might not like Pierre-Luc Dubois, but he's playing well for him. They went and got Jacob Chikrin. They added on defense. They gave them a goaltender. I mean, he's 39 years old. You're not only chasing that milestone, but you give a good team.
This guy has 10 goals in 14 games.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable.
Yeah. He'll probably put up 40 this season, and then you're going to be talking about him breaking that record.
I'm in as well. I think he breaks it this year. 30 goals?
It's going to be awesome, too, because he's going to break it when they're chasing a playoff spot in February or March. It's going to be fun.
All right, last thing here, guys. In or out, Jordan Kyrou will be traded before his no-trade clause kicks in. Let's carry that over to the other side. Alex, how much of the Blues' struggles this year have been blamed on injuries, and what is the pivot for them if this core doesn't end up working out? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend and insurance agent, Tracy Bibb, who is there to take care of you and your family when it comes to your home and car insurance. A couple of things with Tracy. One, incredible customer service, someone who is always available for you, someone who you have that personal relationship with, and you get the personal attention that you need. Tracy's always contacting you, making sure that you understand when prices change or making sure you understand when certain coverage parameters are met or not met. That's where Tracy's always having the conversation with you. But on top of that, she's trying to save you money, making sure you always have the most competitive rates with her team over at Allstate. Super simple to work with. All you need to do is give Tracy a call today. You tell her you heard me talk about it on 101 ESPN and that you're interested in switching over your insurance coverage. 314-328-4260. Tracy and her team will then give you a free non-committal quote, explain everything, even cancel your insurance that you're with now for you. 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bib.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tomorrow night as they host the Boston Bruins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, we've got Monday Night Football for you as the Rams take on the Dolphins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This portion update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, Alex, right now the Blues are without their best forward and their best defenseman. That seems problematic. So some of their struggles can be blamed on that. They have lost now 5 of their last 7 games, including 2 of those games, losing 8-1 against Ottawa and then, of course, on Saturday night against Washington. How much of their struggles, though, can be directly tied back to those injuries versus how much of it is just them giving up in a game like Saturday?
I mean, if we're going like slice of the pie here, I would say you could probably put like 30% towards the injuries, because I'm not going to sit here and say that the loss of Robert Thomas, Philip Broberg, and Matthew Joseph severely changed this team's outcome this season, because you were without all 3, well, at least 2 of those 3 guys when you beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. You were without all 3 of those players when you lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So here's where you're impacted without Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg. Faceoffs are quite obvious, but faceoffs specifically in key situations. Offensive zone when you need to tie the game up, power play, penalty kill, that's where you're lacking without Robert Thomas. You're also lacking the ability to really function the depth of your forwards to where Robert Thomas is not your top line center, which means you can't play Booch in the second line, which means Schen's not on the third line. You got to ramp all those players up. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, because you're so thin in terms of depth and the top players aren't performing, you can't juggle these lines around too much because there's not much you can do. Now, Joseph coming back helps, so that's the Thomas side of things. Yes, you lose Philip Broberg, and yes, you lose that defensive pairing that you can rely on for 19 minutes a night. But you still have Parayko and Suter, who have been really good. They've been one of the best pairings at 5-on-5 this season in terms of their plus-minus rating, the time on ice, and their defensive zone starts. Falk and P.O. Joseph have not been a liability. They've been okay, but they haven't been Broberg. And then Joseph, you lose the energy. This team was hit with injuries, but this team should not be this bad because of the injuries, because you still have a Kyrou, a Buchnevich, a Neighbors, a Holloway, a Braden Shen. All of these guys are viewed as top 6 wingers or top 6 forwards, and they're not performing like it.
I just did some of the math. Since Robert Thomas went down, they've been outscored 32-19 on the ice. They are 3-5 in that stretch. I think a lot of this can be tied back to the injuries. Now, you can't give up the way that they did on Saturday.
Yeah, well,
that's inexcusable.
That was 2 games of those were the 8 goals versus the Ottawa Senators. So 16 in 2 games.
Sure. That counts, though.
It does.
You know, like at the end of the year, they don't go back and say like, but which games did it? No, if you have a negative 25 goal differential, like you have a negative 25 goal differential. That's how it works. We didn't do these caveats when the Cardinals had those games where it was, hey, they'd had a pitcher get hurt early in the game or a guy just didn't have it that day. No, if you lose, you lose. If you let go of the rope, you end up having to deal with the consequences of that. They played really well in that game against Toronto. That was arguably their best game that they've played all season long. That 5-1 win as the response to Robert Thomas going down with the injury. And since then, I think you've been really feeling the impact of not having that guy on the ice. I understand Robert Thomas, I didn't think was having his best season before he went down with the injury. I thought he was kind of reverting back to what he was 2 years ago as opposed to the guy that we saw last year, which was a true, legit #1 center in every sense of the word. But when you lose that, and we already felt like they only had 1 top 6 center to begin with, I think it just totally alters the way that you can play. And you mentioned it earlier today, Alex. In 13 of their 15 games this year, they have fallen behind at some point. That is just not an easy way to win. And I think you're starting to see it becomes harder and harder to come back when you're without Robert Thomas. And then even harder still when you're without Broberg. Because those are guys that not only help create offense, they help shut down offense from the opposition as well. So instead of going down 3-1, you keep that game close, it's, 1-0. So I think that I would put like 60% of it on the injuries, because I think that what we've seen is you don't have right now the impact players at the top of your lineup that can mask for their losses.
Yeah, and it's just so hard for me to give it that high of a percentage, because I can't blame lack of effort on injuries, because I saw it against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I saw it against Toronto twice in all of these games. And honestly, the Utah game, you were in that Utah game despite one bad turnover in the third period to where you were going to overtime, and you were bad in that game. So, like, offensively, you have taken a massive blow without Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg. But we said it when all of these injuries took place. You still have a chance to keep your head above water. You have to play perfect hockey, and you have to alter the way that you're playing in terms of you can't try and go out there and, as Falk put it, play pond hockey. You got to play that stingy brand to where you wait for your bounces. And that's where it's like I look at the Thomas and Broberg losses, and typically when other teams lose their best players, you simplify everything. And this team has gotten away from simplifying, and in fact, they're trying to do too much without Thomas and Broberg on the ice.
Yeah, I think that was always likely, though. Like, I think we do this thing where we say it's next man up mentality, and we don't actually believe it. They might inside of that locker room, and credit to them if they do. I didn't believe that. We said all along, like, when those two guys go down, it totally changes the trajectory of your season, man. Like, I don't know how much longer Broberg's going to be out for, but it's possible their season effectively is over by the time that he gets back in terms of the playoff chances. Now, the Western Conference is leaving things open for you. Nobody's pulling away from this right now. You're, 2 points back of a playoff spot right now? So it's not the end of the world, but I think what we have seen, forget even the wins, losses, anything like that, just watching these games as you're seeing it, and this is not me saying I'm completely out on this team. Like, I have found them up until Saturday to be a far more enjoyable experience to watch because they do try, they fight on the ice. I just don't know that they're overly talented. And when you have Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg who are no longer on the ice, yeah, I expect that to have a massive, massive change in terms of what we're seeing from them game to game. Since they've gone out, since Robert Thomas went out, they have a .333 points percentage. Only Montreal and Seattle have been worse over that stretch. And I think that's kind of to be expected, man. Like, if I told you before the season that the Blues would not have Robert Thomas or Philip Broberg, we would have all been like, oh, well, this is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. And that's what they've been.
Yeah. But face-offs, too. I mean, I just looked at it. Since Robert Thomas went out, you're at 43.5%. The only team that's worse is the team that's tied with you for the worst, and that's the Anaheim Ducks. And, I mean, that...
And your power play percentage in that stretch is 8.3%, 31st in the league. Just all around, they're not doing things that help them win hockey games. Mm-hmm. You have to be perfect in all of the little stuff. Face-offs, you got to win a bunch of them. Power play, you got to be able to take advantage of your opportunities there, because at 5-on-5, we're not going to be a great team. And when they're not doing any of these little things well, yeah, of course you're not going to be able to come out on top. So I would put the majority of the blame on the injuries. T-Bone, out of curiosity, because we're clearly on different sides on this, Alex, where do you fall on this in terms of the percentage of the blame that should be going towards the injuries right now? Not just for that game on Saturday. Set that aside because it's one outing. What we've seen basically since they've been down.
Like 25%.
Okay.
I didn't think this team was very good coming into the year. And I thought Thomas was your one star. So losing him does hurt in that case. To your point of now you don't have the shutdown guy and faceoffs really take a hit. They don't have a center on their roster. So how am I supposed to look at them and say, well, the Thomas injury is the huge thing that's driving it? They had one center to begin the season with, They weren't going to generate a lot of 5-on-5 offense for me. I didn't see that coming from this year.
None.
Sure, but if it's still just one, it's still a big problem.
One.
Yeah,
oh no, I thought we were talking with the injuries of Pavel Buchnevich.
No,
he's a
zero now. But
yeah.
I thought this team wasn't going to be very good coming into the year 5-on-5 offensively. I didn't see it. I saw them trying the kind of unknowns with players like a Holloway, and look, I've been impressed with him, but they had like Texier that was brought in and Joseph, and I remember saying at the time, like, hey, there's a reason some of these guys were not on, like Holloway wasn't playing a lot. It was because Edmonton, A, had better players, but B, they didn't trust Dylan Holloway, Joseph, why did Ottawa trade him? Kind of a cap casualty, but that means you're willing to get rid of him. So I thought they were always going to be this kind of team. I think they're better defensively than I thought they were going to be, and Broberg's been a big surprise, but this is kind of what I expected. And what they were when they had Thomas and Broberg was kind of what I expected. injuries kind of play a part of it, but if you're not generating 5-on-5 offense, you're not going to be a good team. And I didn't see where they were going to have any kind of special teams.
And I guess that would be where we differ a little bit. I feel like we're closer probably than me and Alex are on this. I feel like that ability to get anything going at 5-on-5 was dictated by them having Broberg and Thomas on the ice. Once you pull those pieces out, I just don't know where the offense is coming from other than Booch and Kyrou. I don't see really a whole, especially when Joseph was out too. You lose all three of those key pieces. Like Joseph was a guy that was doing all the gritty work. Broberg was creating for others. And then you have Thomas who, like, despite all of the deficiencies this year, still drives offense for you and wins faceoffs at a crazy high clip, which helps on your power play, all these different things. There's no way to be able to, you can't overcome that. You can't. It's like saying in the NFL, like, if the Bills lose Josh Allen, and I'm not saying Robert Thomas is that necessarily, but like the degree to which they generate everything for their respective teams, they're bleeped. Bills are done. It's game over. Like sayonara. You're not overcoming that. That's kind of how I feel.
I think what the difference with that though is like when you have a Thomas, it creates more opportunities for the depth, and that's where when we talked about the Robert Thomas injury, the spotlight goes to your best players. Because now you don't have Robert Thomas driving offense, but you know what you have? You have a guy that a lot of people believe is a 40-goal scorer. You have a guy that's playing the center position that you believe is nearly a point-per-game player, and those guys have gone absent. And that's where it's like you look at...
That's not fair.
What do you mean it's not fair?
Kyrou has not gone absent. Kyrou's had some of his best games and some of his worst.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, okay, 50-50 on this one. That's not the star player. Booch has gone absent for you. But... that's why when I watched the Maple Leafs game, that's where Kyrou was at his best. Mm-hmm. When I watched the Tampa Bay Lightning game, it's when Kyrou was at his best. But then I watched the Montreal Canadiens game. I watched the Washington Capitals game. I watched the Flyers game. It's when they weren't at their best. And that's where it's hard for me to blame the injuries on effort because you guys were out there just dominating. And I understand you're going to have games where you lose because that's a hard brand of hockey to play for 4 to 6 weeks. But it shouldn't be twice in 6 games to where you get blown out 8-1 and there's zero offense from your players.
Who do you think are the players with? There's 5 players on the Blues that have a -5 or worse since Thomas went down. Who do you think they are?
Schen's got to be one of them. Nope. Booch has got to be one of them.
Booch has a -7.
Is Kyrou on that list?
Games. Nope.
I didn't think
Kyrou's actually one of the top in terms of plus-minus.
P.O. Joseph.
He is. Yeah.
Scott Pernovich.
-9. Justin Falk's a -8. Fox a -6. Neighbors -5. So P.O. Joseph, Falk, Booch, Foxa, Neighbors.
That's the Broberg effect right there. You don't have a second line. You don't have a second defensive pair because what you had with Broberg was 2 guys that you could play for 60 minutes and just shut down the other side.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to play your third pair.
I think defensively, like that 25% that I said, I think defensively has been the biggest spot where they've been impacted because of the injury. I think offensively, to me, the Thomas injury was like losing like your best wide receiver on a bad quarterback team because there's just not enough offense when they had Thomas still. Like, to me, they were still just a okay offense 5-on-5 when they had Thomas. They never are going to have a good power play because, as we talked about on Friday at Centene, they don't have the personnel to do that even with Robert Thomas. So
I guess maybe the way that I was looking at it is like grading on that curve that you're talking about, T-Bone. They had just enough to like stay relevant when Thomas and Broberg were out there. So when they don't have those guys out there, the reason that I'm blaming the injuries for their lack of success is because I don't know how I could possibly expect them to do much of anything offensively when they're not on the ice. When it was like 20th best in the NHL with Broberg and Thomas, it should be 28th best or 29th best or 30th best in the league without them. All right, coming up next, time for the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends down at Ted Drew's, the famous frozen custard destination off of Chippewa that has been there since 1929. So many different families have built memories by going off to Ted Drew's and just sitting back and spending time together. I still remember doing that when I was 8, 9, 10 years old with my family. Dinner on the hill and then going to get dessert at Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. And they've been doing this for 95 years, 4 generations of families serving St. Louisans that famous frozen custard. Whatever type of flavor you want, you can mix and match. They've got specialty flavors. They've got it in malts, concrete, shakes, sundaes, floats, ice cream sodas, and this is the best part, you could buy it in bulk, in quarts, and bring it home, freeze it, and then have it for all of your holiday desserts coming up over the next few months. And while you're out there, make sure you get some holiday shopping done. Walk across the parking lot, check out the gift shop on Chippewa, Ted Drew's apparel, Ted Drew's souvenir, Ted Drew's gift cards, everything that you would need for some great Christmas gifts for that special someone. So make sure you get down there, check them out this week. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
All right, let's dive into the junk drawer with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, have you ever mistakenly done something where maybe you send a text and you're like, oh, no, I just sent a text that was supposed to go to my wife and I sent it to my mom, something like that?
If you're getting to the sexual connotation, no. But if I've just sent a text where I'm like, I didn't mean to send that, absolutely.
I've done that a number of times. You guys know my story with Buster Olney where...
Yeah, you ruined our our monthly hits with him.
Yeah, I was a big
Shocked
dummy.
He didn't respond to my last text.
And accidentally sent something to him that was supposed to go to Jim Duquette. And, you know, the whole thing got finagled and we've never heard from him.
You insulted his milk farm is what you did.
So that's happened, but, I'm sure I've had something else before that was supposed to go to one person, ended up going to another. Well, this isn't exactly that, but I'm assuming, Alex, you've bought some dolls or Barbies or whatever from the store for your little girls at home. Well, there's a Wicked doll that has been
your junk drawer story was
released.
my junk drawer story.
And a company that sells these put the website on the back of the doll, as you'd expect. Hey, for more information, go here, right? For more information on Moana, go to disney.com/Moana, whatever. Well, this one is a Wicked doll. And the website that they put on the back, as you'd expect, would be www.wicked.com. Please do not go there.
Especially if you're at your work.
Unfortunately for them,
T-Bone's Googling.
that is not the website that they thought that it was going to be. It is instead an adult film website.
Oh.
So this website that they put on the back for more information for, the Wicked doll, instead of sending you to get more information on this character from a children's film, it takes you to, place that'll tell you all about how to make children.
Yeah, and what's worse about this is, the Wicked movie is for mid-teen girls.
Yeah.
It's not the website you want to find out that your 13-year-old daughter was excited for the movie and like, Daddy, I went and checked out the
Can you
the
imagine?
website. I don't know what I would do as a parent. I would. You're having the birds and the bees conversation a lot earlier than you anticipated.
Because of a bleeping Wicked doll.
Come on, man.
They have updated this story. They have pulled off all of their dolls for sale at retailers, saying, quote, "We deeply regret this unfortunate error and are taking immediate action to remedy it. Parents are advised that the misprint, incorrect website is not appropriate for children." Thanks for the clarification there. Consumers who had already purchased the product are also advised to discard the product's packaging or obscure the link and may contact the company for further information.
Oh, yeah.
How does that happen?
I have no idea. How does the person that's putting together this doll be like, okay, what's the website again? And then, you just double check it before you send that out.
Proofread.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you're doing, that email you're sending to your boss, proofread it. I'm saying this without actually following it. I need to be better at this stuff.
How about this? If you're going to put a link somewhere, just double check the link before you actually send it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just make sure the link works and that it directs you to the right website before you mass send it out to the people.
Especially when this is something that's going on a product.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're sending this to your friend, an email, whatever. This is something that is going to be on the back of the package forever.
And this just cost them billions of dollars.
I don't know about billions, but
millions. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it's a boatload of money.
Yeah.
All of the dolls that had been produced will have to now be repackaged.
Not even about the money. You're worried about the therapy that's going to have to go into place for all the kids that checked out that website.
Now, to be fair, I don't think any kids are necessarily going to the website on the back of a doll that says.
Somebody discovered it.
Clearly, yeah, good point.
Somebody's child was like, "This looks cool.
Mom, I don't remember this in the musical."
That's like the person that spilled the McDonald's coffee and sued because it was hot. And it's like, yeah, it's
too hot.
Freaking coffee. Anyways, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to our football pick'em reveal. But next, can the Cardinals take advantage of other teams' money problems? They've got some money issues of their own, but it sounds like they are not alone in that regard. What does that mean for their offseason? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, the Cardinals aren't the only team in Major League Baseball that have some money issues heading into this offseason. San Francisco has said, we're planning to take our payroll down a bit. Texas has said the same thing. We already saw last year Minnesota do that coming off of a playoff season. They had to take their payroll back a bit. Seattle basically never takes their payroll up, and I don't anticipate that changing this year either. So as you look towards the offseason, you think about these teams around Major League Baseball that aren't named basically the Dodgers, the Yankees, or the Mets. Most teams are going to try to improve on a budget going into this offseason. In your opinion, do you think that's something that the Cardinals can take advantage of, since they do have so many players that are either on short-term deals or have not a ton of money that is expected to come their way?
They absolutely can, and they should. I mean, when you look at some of the, let's just go in on the pitching side of things. For what some of these pitchers are going to be asking via the free agent market, if you're telling me I'm a team that's trying to cut payroll, but I need to put somebody into my 3-4 spot, I can go out there and get a Steven Matz for 1 year at $12 million. Or if the Cardinals are willing to eat money, which this is the part that if you're trying to slash, I understand, but you've already slashed a lot of money. Can I eat $10 million of Miles Michaelis' contract? Because Sonny Gray's obviously made it pretty clear he wants to remain in St. Louis. And then you go to the position player side. If Nolan Arenado is willing to go, compared to what like an Alex Bregman was going to get paid, telling me I can go get a third baseman if the Cardinals are willing to eat a little money, depending on where he wants to go. This is the market that I think the Cardinals should be aggressively pursuing between now and the winter meetings, of finding out, like, hey, what are you looking for? Because on the free agent market, it's going to cost you this much. How would you like to get the discounted rate of what we have to offer via trade?
Yeah, and I think by doing that, then you can free up some more money to try and go out and maybe get a contract from somebody else. You know, like Arizona's a team that people are calling about, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. I'm sure Montgomery will get a couple of phone calls as well. But to me, if you're the Cardinals, look, Mo, the way he sounded when talking at the GM meetings last week, to me sounds like the Cardinals are already at their safe spot. And if they cut more money, then it's more of, hey, Arnau doesn't really want to be here. We're in this retool. We don't really blame him. We're going to stay on his good graces and players' good graces across the country. And we're going to trade him to a contender right now. And we'll cut a little money. We'll eat a little money. But now we've got $20 million, let's say. That is, either we can sit on it and eat it, or maybe we go out there and we try and trade for somebody that is cutting salary, and we bring them in and say, hey, we'll take on that contract to help you guys out. You know, maybe you just do a guy like I just mentioned, like a Merrill Kelly, if he is getting traded. I understand he's a unrestricted free agent, but it's twofold. One, you can bring him in, and you can potentially sign him to a contract extension. Or two, you bring him in, and if he doesn't want to sign a contract extension, well, great, we'll just flip him at the deadline if we're out of things. So I think this is an offseason where, though we've talked about slashing payroll, now that things are kind of cleared up for the Cardinals, they've got their TV deal in place, they've got a better idea of what the revenues are going to look like, I think they should be more open-minded to doing a little of the shuffling of the chairs of, okay, maybe we trade out Arenado, maybe we trade out Matz, maybe we trade out, maybe it is a Michaelis, and then we've got 3 spots in the rotation, and instead of filling that with 3 young guys, we fill it with 2, and then we find somebody that wants to dump a salary into our hands that we'll take on.
So you can do both, right? You're buying and selling.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is, like, I'll just use an example. Eric Fetty, to me, is a prime candidate to be traded by the Cardinals this offseason. I know they have said publicly, privately, it doesn't sound like that's something they're necessarily interested in, but there's also been some reporting that they'll listen on offers, and if there's one that's compelling enough, maybe they would consider it. Eric Fetty has 1 year left on his contract at $7.5 million. Now, imagine this if you are a team that has pitching issues and you need innings this offseason, and you're limited in terms of what you can spend for those innings, and you also have other needs. Are you going to go out there and sign Nick Pivetta, for example, to a deal that's like 3 years, $60 or $50 million? That's what they're projecting over on The Athletic. 3 years, $50 million for Nick Pivetta. Or do you want to trade something for Eric Fetty at 1 year, $7.5 million to get you through this season, and then you kind of reassess where you're at financially after next year, and then maybe you get next year's Nick Pivetta or better than Nick Pivetta, and you upgrade from that spot in your rotation? I'm taking the Fetty side. And I would say this if the Cardinals were in a different spot and they also had money complications and they were looking out to the market to find who's our guy, Fetty would be the exact kind of pitcher that I would expect them to target. I think other teams will do something similar. I wonder about like Cleveland, for example. I don't know what their offseason is going to look like, but they had a real lack of starting pitching this past year. And Fetty is the exact kind of pitcher that I would expect them to target via trade. maybe that's a team that you could target. Somebody like that, a mid-market team that needs depth in their starting rotation, a 3 or a 4 that you can expect to throw 170 innings next year with an above-average ERA. That's what Eric Fedde can do for you, and that should get a pretty sizable return for the Cardinals, because in an offseason where nobody wants to spend, they've got their backs up against the wall. They've got to find alternate routes to be able to get that player that they need, and you have it. Whether it's Fedde or another team that needs a closer that doesn't want to pay top market value for Tanner Scott this offseason, they can go to you. They can go to a couple of other teams that are potentially trading them. This year, I believe, for most teams, the currency will not be the money they spend in free agency, but will instead be the players that they're willing to trade via their minor league prospects. And I think the Cardinals can be a real beneficiary of that. And I'll also be curious, T-Bone, on your side of things, if there are veterans that are available, are the Cardinals going to be willing to be a part of that conversation? Like, if somebody's getting to the end of their arbitration process with another team, 1, maybe 2 years left, are there players that maybe the Cardinals would say, you know what? It's a unique opportunity for us to be able to capitalize on a market that otherwise shouldn't have been there for us because somebody else had money problems. That's something they should be doing.
Or can you do a little what Doug Armstrong did, too, to where maybe it's a guy that's got 1 year left that's got a lot of money and another team's trying to unload that maybe you bring in for the rest of the season just as a casualty, but you're able to bring in something also.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I would be capitalizing on any and every opportunity via the trade market if you're the Cardinals. And I think I would start with the starting pitching, because the last couple of years, for how bad the market was in terms of what you had to pay for the guys and what the product was, I would be talking to everybody saying, hey, before you hit the free agent market, who do you want from our team? Because we can make a deal work. And that's how you reset this pipeline that you're talking about, by offloading some of these things that are cheaper than what other guys would be.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to go kind of the buy/sell mindset as to what I'm talking about, trying to poach somebody from another team that has to do some cost cutting, I think it's probably in the rotation. Because, one, the position players, that's really the young core that they're trying to figure out, right? It's not so much in the rotation, though there are arms that they are wanting to find out more about, like a Palante McGreevy. But again, we talked about this last week about their path of least resistance to this cutting of payroll. Where's the path of least resistance for them to move on from some arms and also do kind of a little shuffling of the chairs in that rotate? It's in the rotation, because you can either trade Matz or put him in the bullpen while also trading an Eric Fedde if they want to. And now you've also got this opportunity for 2 young arms to potentially come in the rotation. Maybe even if you're able to move on from Michaelis, you get 2 arms into the rotation while also being able to bring in somebody as well.
I would not. That's interesting. I would not do that. Unless it's a real, like you mentioned earlier, Merrill Kelly. He's not a part of your future. I'm probably not going to do that. If there's somebody that, like, if they were willing to trade Zach Gallen, now we can have a conversation. Because now that's a guy that I expect to not only be here for the next year or two, but the Cardinals should try to extend him beyond that. That would be the scenario that I'm interested in it, but I don't want a veteran. Like, Merrill Kelly's 36 years old. I don't want Merrill Kelly when he's 37, 38 years old on the back end of my retool. I want the next Merrill Kelly. I want the guy that's going to be 26, 27, 28 years old as a part of my retool. That would be the scenario that I'm interested in. I think next year, the biggest thing for them is finding out what they have in Michael McGreevy and Andre Palante and eventually Quinn Matthews and eventually Tink Hintz. I want to get answers on those young pitchers. The place where I would be open to something like this is, hey, can I get like a real upgrade in my outfield? Can I get a real upgrade somewhere in my lineup? Like, is somebody available that allows for that to happen within my roster? I'm not sure that that guy is going to exist this offseason via trade. But if he does, and it's a surprise to people, that's a spot where I would potentially be willing to enter in those conversations. Like, and you're probably going to have to use, like, Nolan Gorman or other pieces at your Major League roster, Lars Nootbaar, et cetera, to be able to get into those.
Like, I'm just using this as an example just because I've got this team's payroll in front of me. And we mentioned the Giants looking to cut payroll, right? Well, if you're looking to upgrade your outfield in a meaningful way, look, I don't think they're going to block or move on from a Walker or an Nootbaar. So it's center field we're talking about. You know, what do you really value Michael Ciani, and where do you really think the ceiling is for Victor Scott? He's older, so I don't think I would do this, but he's a player I'm just going to float out there like a Mike Yastrzemski. Guy that's played center field, making $7 million. Bring him in maybe on this what we're talking
that's
about.
Another progress stopper to me.
Yeah,
if he was 25, I would do that. But
I don't think he's the guy.
Something?
Yeah, he's 33.
I'd rather play my guys in center field.
Arb.
Yeah. If there was another opportunity there, like if they had somebody that was similar production-wise to what you got out of Mike Yastrzemski last year, but instead of being 33, he was 27, and he was entering the final year of arbitration. He's $7 million or whatever, and they want to cut some costs. That I'm willing to talk about. I'm more interested in somebody, though, that has like real tangible, like this team won't be in this conversation, I don't think, this offseason. But if the Astros needed to move money around to be able to bring back Alex Bregman, and they decided, you know what, Kyle Tucker, we love you, but we view the guy that we're going to keep around long term to be Alex Bregman, we're going to go ahead and trade Kyle Tucker this offseason. That's the thing that I'm talking about. Because Tucker could then come in and play right field for you. You move Walker over to left field most likely, or he plays left field, however you decide to do it. And I'm trading Nootbaar in this situation. I'm probably trading like a Ryan Helsley down to Houston, so that way they've got a cost-controlled closer that they've got. Like, I'll trade whatever it takes because I've now got my franchise caliber player in Kyle Tucker who can come in and be one of the 3 best players on a championship contending type of a team. That's the type of player that I'm willing to do this for. I don't know if those guys are going to exist this offseason or not, but normally I would think there's no chance of them existing. This year, because of all the money issues that so many teams are dealing with, there's at least the possibility that they are. I think the first place you go, though, your guys that are cost-controlled, that are relatively cheap compared to what people can get on the market, they're going to have a little more value than they otherwise probably should because of how many teams are cash-strapped going into this offseason with the RSN situations. All right, coming up next, let's get into our football pick'em reveal. It was another good freaking week for T-Bone, so he'll tell you all about that. And Alex and I will explain what we had to do next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, when I bet, I want to win the most money possible. And with Circa Sports in Illinois, that is exactly what they're doing for me. You can check them out today. Download the app if you haven't done so yet. Check out what their spreads are. Compare it to FanDuel. Compare it to DraftKings. Compare it to MGM. You can check out all the other apps out there. They believe you're going to come back to Circa because they don't limit you when you win, which is something that these other sites are doing. And you're going to win the most money possible by betting on Circa. Tonight, if you want to go to the Monday Night Football game, Dolphins versus the Rams. I actually kind of like the Dolphins in this one, Alex. And based on the odds, I like them a lot. Plus 127 on the money line over on Circa. Bet $100, win 127. If I made the exact same bet over on FanDuel, it's plus 120. I'm winning more with Circa.
You get those tight money line splits. You get those big parlays that BK's talking about. Whatever it might be that you're searching for, Circa Sports app is there for you. Plus, if you have issues, which don't happen very often, the Circa customer service is great. You're actually speaking with somebody who's working at Circa Sports rather than just a robot. So download the app today for all of your sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's time for our football pick'em reveal. So last week, if you're new to the show, every Friday we give you 3 picks. Scale of 1 to 3, very simple. And each month, at the end of the month, whoever has the fewest points will end up getting punished. I got punished for the last month. Alex got punished for the first month. T-Bone's sitting pretty so far, and he's having a really good start to this month as well. So let's go through this. Let's start with Tanner. T-Bone started in the NFL with a pick that I liked but didn't have the cojones to make.
I'm going to start in the NFL for my 1-point play. Everybody now is hearing Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams try and sell you the story of about the year when Rodgers said, hey, patience. And the Packers ended up coming back. They roared back and made the playoffs. Not this week, boys. The Cardinals are going to put them back in their place. Give me the Cardinals plus 1.5.
That's my 2-point play. I'm in the same line of thinking with you. I feel like I'm betting against the Jets no matter what this season, and I think Arizona wins this one straight up.
Murray, near side to Harrison, over the shoulder, touchdown.
The Jets are one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm making them my 3-point play every single week from now on and just betting against them.
They're terrible. You hear after the game, Davante Adams said, yeah, we lacked energy. Isn't that what you were saying about the Raiders? So did you basically just leave the Raiders to go to the New York version of the Raiders, who happen to have a
It's like he might not be
Aaron
a good
Rodgers
teammate.
at quarterback?
You should have asked out for another team.
They're a 3.5-point favorite next week against the Colts at home.
I'm taking the Colts.
I'm not touching that game. I don't trust either team. I didn't really trust the Cardinals, but I felt a lot better about them than I do the Colts.
At least they were at home.
Yeah.
I still don't trust the Jets.
Cardinals are going to make the playoffs, aren't they?
No, the Rams are going to top them for the NFC West and knock them out of the playoffs.
It's going to be a tight race.
I heard
it's going to be a fun one.
Someone was comparing them to the Lions and their
from a couple
turnaround
years ago?
from Dan Campbell, which was an interesting comparison.
Cardinals
I can see it.
down the stretch at Seattle, at Minnesota, Seattle again, and then New England, Carolina. You could get, if you get to 9, you're probably in. So beat New England, beat Carolina, pull off one other win the rest of the way, you're in. Good for them, man. Seriously, good for them. They're a fun team to watch. I don't know how good they actually are, but they're a fun team to watch. And Kyler's having a good season.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. Kyler looks awesome this season.
All right, so that was the 1-point play for T-Bone. 2-point play for Alex on the board. Let's get to T-Bone's 2-point play over in the college slate.
Guys, Iowa State lost last week, and now they are basically on the verge of elimination. They need to win out, and they're going to need some help to get to the college football playoff. Yeah. This week, they go on the road as they take on Kansas. Hey, I've told you guys my rationale about the Jayhawks. They stink! So give me Iowa State -3.
Daniels all the time in the world, and that's on the money. Luke Graham all the way for a Kansas touchdown.
At one point, KU was up 38-13 in this game. They ended up winning 45-36. It became much closer than it needed to. They have the worst point differential, by the way, KU does in the fourth quarter of any team in the country this year, I believe, which showed up once again in this game. T-Bone, buddy.
Yeah, look, when it was 21-7, I immediately knew I've lost my 2-point play. Yeah. That's a rough look for Iowa State.
Anytime you throw out there, stink, it doesn't work. It's like, G-Man.
Can speak to that from
Doesn't
experience.
work.
All right, you had one more college football pick because, of course, you did. And this one was a big spread. I didn't love it at the time.
My three-point play going to stick in college, and let me tell you, this is a big old spread, fellas, and I ain't going to lie. I'm a little worried of taking this, especially as a three-point play, but I'm feeling a little lucky, so I'm going to follow the Irish. So give me Notre Dame minus 26.5 against Florida State.
First and goal, it's Leonard. His second touchdown on the ground. Leonard walks in. Notre Dame extends the lead.
Never had to sweat that one, guys.
Florida State's a good example of why you have to appreciate your good seasons.
Relax. They're a good example of not just throwing money wildly at the transfer portal. You got to actually build a football team.
Yeah. I mean, there's some truth to that, but they won 10 games in 2022, 13 games last year. If not for their quarterback getting hurt, would have made the 4-team college football playoff, and now they're the worst team in college football. I don't know how that happens as quickly as it did. They're clearly missing in the transfer portal the way that they did. But, man, this team is an atrocity. They fired their coordinators today. Did I see that right?
They fired both their offensive and defensive
I would, too, after this.
I don't blame them.
No, I don't either, but I would
guy
still
named Norvell.
I would still fire everybody after that one.
All right, 2-1 week for T-Bone. 4 points on the week once again. T-Bone has 10 on this month. He's 5-1 so far. A bit of a heater to start out the month for T-Bone. Let's get to Alex's picks. His 1-point play is a game that I also had as my 1-point play over in the NFL.
Like, I feel like the line is off. The Commanders are at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm so
the Commanders
done
have
with
been one of the best teams in the NFL this year. The Steelers have a great defense. I don't trust their offense at all. So give me the Commanders minus the 2.5 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
My 1-point play with the Commanders. And instilled confidence of the Washington Commanders team after that trade of Lattimore. And I know Lattimore's not playing. Dan Quinn announced it just a couple of minutes ago. But when you go out and make a move like that, it gives an entire team confidence that, hey, we're better than what we previously thought we were at the beginning of the season.
Third and long. Wilson floats it way upstairs. Williams, he's got it. Touchdown.
I'm not going to side with BK ever again when he says the line's weird on this one. I had the Bills game as my other option as the 1 point. I should have went with it.
You guys just got cooked by Ross.
I still think that the Commanders were the better team. Now, it doesn't matter because they lost outright, much less with the spread. I got to give credit where it's due, dude. Russell Wilson is playing well. Yeah. We all questioned the decision to go with him over Justin Fields when they did. He fits that offense perfectly. You look at what he's doing. George Pickens looks like he has a new lease on life. Mike Williams made a huge catch in that game for the touchdown as well.
He just needed to get away from Aaron Rodgers.
It's just pure YOLO balls. That's all they're doing. It's just deep balls down the sideline, and if they hit at a 50% rate, they win the game. That's it. It's a super easy offense to describe. Hey, we're going to run the hell out of the football, and then we're going to take deep shots down the field. And if it works, they end up winning, and they did in this game. They've got an awesome defense. Jaden Daniels, a solid, unspectacular game in this one. Didn't have much of a running game to speak of, and boom, you lose the game. So I don't feel any worse about the Commanders after this one. It just makes me feel a lot better about the Steelers, and I underestimated them going into it. All right, Alex, your 2-point play was also one that T-Bone made with the Cardinals, so you got that one right. Now, let's get to your 3-point play from the weekend.
This is a bold pick. I'm going to Sunday Night Football, and I'm saying the Detroit Lions are taking on the Houston Texans. Are they the favorite? I think it's 3.5 points is what it stands at. You know what has not been good this season? Houston's defense. You know what's been awesome this season? Detroit's offense.
Both
so
true.
3.5 points was easy for me.
And now back in his hometown, he's got a 52-yarder for a comes-from-behind win for the agent. From 52 for the win. Just inside the upright, Jake Bates, hometown hero, and the Lions have come all the way back.
Another one where you're down 23-7 at one point, Alex. So I have to imagine at that point you weren't feeling great.
Yeah, I turned it off. I'm like, okay, I can't watch this. Can't watch my 3-point play just go away.
So did you feel good or bad that you got the side right, but the point spread a little off?
I don't care about I don't care about the side. I was rooting for him to miss that field goal because if I know anything, it's Dan Campbell's just going to drive the ball down the field and score a touchdown, and I cover. But the problem was it goes out there with a 52 because when Why am I blanking on the kicker's name for
Bates.
Houston? Yeah.
Oh, no, not him.
Fairbairn.
Yeah.
When he missed it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. There was like 90 seconds. I'm like, Dan's going to drive down the field and go for a touchdown. And then when he got out there with 52 yards, I'm like, God, please miss it. I felt great when I made the pick. Once that game started, I felt awful. And then I never thought the Lions were going to win by more than 3.5.
Bates, his career has really taken off since that big 60-yard kick against the Battlehawks, huh?
Yeah.
That first UFL game that they ended up winning on that walk-off win. We knew then here in St. Louis. We discovered Bates before the rest of the country knew him.
Caused the law. And he just handed me a loss.
It is unfortunately a loss for Alex. So he ends up going 1-2 on the week, gets 2 points. He's up to 5 points, a 500 record, 3-3 through the first 2 months of our Pick'em Challenge. All right, or first 2 weeks, of our Pick'em Challenge. My final 2 picks. I've got my 1-point play. You already heard that. That was the Commanders. Wrong. Now, my 2-point play is in the college football slate, and I've never been more happy to be wrong.
My 2-point play for this week, I don't know if this is me coping. I don't know if this is me being a bad fan. Oklahoma is coming into Columbia, and they are only a 2.5-point favorite against my Tigers. And I don't know how Mizzou scores. I think Oklahoma comes in and wins an ugly game, and we look back on this and say, they won, they covered.
Arnold hit it, ball's loose. It is scooped up by the Tigers. Zion Young with the scoop, big score.
I was 100% correct on everything that I just said until the final 3 minutes of that game.
Yep.
Everything about that game went the exact way that I'd expected it to. And then we got to the final 3 minutes, and all hell broke loose. I've never been more happy to be wrong about one of my picks in our Pick'em Challenge. I'm thrilled about the fact that Oklahoma did not only not cover the spread, but lost the game outright. I'm good. So let's get to my 3-point play, which is also in the college football slate and also in the SEC.
My 3-point play, give me the Ole Miss Rebels at home against Georgia. I think Ole Miss is the better team in this game. I think Ole Miss will win this game outright, and we will leave saying, man, the SEC is just not what it was last year. Give me Ole Miss plus 3 points at home against Georgia.
They need the 4-yard line. It's 3rd down and 6. Dart. Wells. Touchdown, Juice Wells.
I was right.
I'm allowed to be wrong every now and then.
Oh, I couldn't believe it.
I'm allowed to be right every now and again.
Yeah, there you go.
More than again than now.
1-2 on the week for your boy BK. I get 3 points. I'm tied with Alex now, 5 points apiece.
1-2 and he gets 3
and I
points.
are just going to go back and forth on this thing.
Stupid. I'm going to break through this next week.
BK somehow has the same amount of points as you, and yet he's below 500.
That's right, 2 and 4.
It's because I'm not
Hit
getting these
those
3-pointers.
Plays.
I keep going bold. I need to start just going obvious.
It's like the money ball and the 3-point contest. If you get that money ball, everything else starts to fall into place. That's me with the 3-point plays. I just got to keep hitting on those, and then we'll be good.
Because I originally was like, man, the Jets stink. That should have been my 3-point play. I should have just stuck with it, but I just got too cocky with the Lions there.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gone with the Commanders. I had other picks that I liked probably and I should have taken. And
that one was right on the 1-point play.
sometimes you just lose your picks. So far, Alex has 5. I have 5. T-Bone has 10. We'll get back to our picks this week coming up on Friday, so be sure to stay tuned on that. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to the rewind, but next, how do we reset our expectations for the Blues the rest of the way? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tomorrow night as they host the Boston Bruins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Carver for Puck Drop at 7. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Monday Night Football as the Rams take on the Dolphins. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alex, we're only a few weeks into this Robert Thomas injury. We still got quite a while with the Philip Broberg injury to deal with as well. And the Blues aren't coping with it particularly well. Prior to the Robert Thomas injury, the Blues were 12th in goals allowed per game. They were 25th in power play percentage, but they were at 13%. And on faceoffs, they were 7th in the NHL. They were winning 53% of their faceoffs prior to him going down. Well, since he's gone down with injury, 31st in goals allowed per game, 31st in power play percentage, and 31st in faceoff win percentage. This is not a team that has been coping well with the one real center that they had that's a legit top 6 center. How do you view revised expectations for this team for the rest of the way? Because I know we all saw the team a little differently coming into the season. How do you see them now? What are your expectations?
This is going to blow a lot of people's minds because I'm the apparent Blues honk that gets paid by them, which I don't, by the way.
Apologist, homer, honk.
I think over the next... Ironic hearing honk from him. Anyway, we'll move on.
I get it. No,
I had to make sure you got it. I just wanted to let it simmer for a couple of seconds.
This one actually came off as a joke, whereas last week didn't so much.
Let me finish.
Well, you'll let me finish on this one. Yeah, that one was a little Tony. We get it.
Yeah.
I look at this next stretch while these guys are out, which they're probably not back until the end of December, if not beginning of January. I look at this as you're probably talking about fighting for a top pick in the draft. It sounds super negative, but man, this has actually been an easy schedule for you since Thomas and Broberg went down. You've played one set of back-to-back. You've had a lot of days off in between to where you've had practice time. You're about to go through a stretch all the way up to December 31st with 3 back-to-backs. You're on road trips that extend through New York. At the end of this one, you've got the Western Canada road trip, and then you've got to go through Florida and Detroit. You play a ton of playoff contending teams in terms of Buffalo, Carolina, Minnesota, the New Yorks. You go into a lot more Central Division teams in the month of December, including Winnipeg again, Dallas. You've yet to beat a Central Division team this season.
That's crazy.
So I look at this stretch, and again, like being super optimistic, maybe Robert Thomas is back for you by the Winter Classic. That means you've got about 25 or 20 games, I think it would be, where you're going to be relying on what we have just seen this team do. Consistency in terms of carrying over the simple brand of hockey and little to no room for errors. So prior to the Broberg thing going down, I thought they could overcome the Robert Thomas injury and keep your head above water because you play simple, you play defensively, and you're going goaltending-wise. BK gave you those numbers. Defensively, you have taken a massive step back without Broberg and Thomas, and even with Matthew Joseph in the lineup, it's going to be tough to keep your head above water.
Yeah, maybe this is unfair of me, but expectations for me haven't really changed because to me, the expectations were never watching their wins and losses and their point total. It was about player development, player growth, and that's what I'm still watching. I think now is the time where you're really going to find out who solidifies themselves in the core. Who's the guys that weren't giving up in the third period in that loss in the 8-1 game the other night. You know, now you're really going to find out, okay, can Holloway step up his game for a 10 to 15 game stretch? Because if he is a part of the core, it's guaranteed he's probably going to, at some point in his career with the St. Louis Blues, need to do that again. You know, we've seen that with players that play in kind of that third-line role or in a second-line role. They have to bump up at times because of injury. To me, expectations really haven't changed. Now, granted, I don't want to see them quit in a third period like they did over the weekend, but I do think, for me, it's nothing really has changed. It's still trying to see the growth of some of these guys that were brought in to help out the core.
If I can interrupt real quick, and I let you finish, so I apologize.
Yeah, I kind of finished.
Who is it that you're looking at and saying, well, I still want to see what they grow or how they grow?
Holloway.
I'd say Holloway.
Hasn't he already established Holloway and Neighbors? Haven't they already established themselves as core members for you?
No.
Neighbors maybe more than the other guys, but for me, like Bolduc.
Okay, but Bolduc's not playing.
Okay,
I think
but
that's a mistake.
Yeah,
Well, I do
agree.
too, but that's why it's like
to your question. I just viewed the first 15, whatever we've played, 11, 15 games.
15.
I've seen guys play well for 15 games and then not get back to that form. That's why I don't think they're there yet.
And the only reason I bring that up is, I would go the opposite of that by looking at these younger players and trying to see how they fit into your core. I'm looking at your core and trying to figure out, is this the right group of guys for me?
But who are you talking about when you say that?
I mean, you're talking about the guys that should be leading you through this.
Who are you talking about?
You're talking about Kyrou. You're talking about Braden Shen. You're talking about Justin Falk. You're talking about Colton Parayko, although I think he's pretty much done what he needs to do. I mean, you're talking about the guys that, when Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg went down, are supposed to be carrying your team through this battle.
The reason why I asked is because I don't view Shin and Falk in the same category as Kyrou and Parayko. I don't think Shin and Falk are leading you through this. Like, Shin's probably going to be around for the foreseeable future, and I expect him to be here still when the Blues are good again. But I don't expect it, and this is not a shot against Braden Shin. It's where he's at in his career. I don't expect him to be a top 6 forward when that happens. I think it's every bit as likely that he's a fourth-line player for you, the way that Steen was when this Blues team is going back to really contending, as it is that he's a top 6 winger or whatever. So I think more than likely he's probably your third-line center when this Blues team gets good again, or a third-line winger. And there's no problem with that. That's totally fine. You can win with players like Braden Shin in that capacity. But Kyrou and Parayko, I'm with you, Alex. You need to see something out of them. I would also say it's totally understandable if Kyrou, and I know people will disagree with me on this, it's understandable if Kyrou's game doesn't quite live up to expectations when he's a second-line player and you don't have a second-line center. There isn't one currently on the roster, and there's not a top 6 center currently on the roster without having Robert Thomas out there. So it's just hard for me to really evaluate his game right now. There are things like what happened on Saturday, can't happen. The turnover the other night, can't happen. Those things you can't evaluate, but I don't know, man. There's just not a lot that I can learn about those players in particular. I know people are going to disagree with me on that, but that's how I personally feel about it.
It's just when Shen and Falk stand up for the second time in 6 games talking about the effort was embarrassing and that we just basically gave up. I didn't think Neighbors gave up in that game. I thought Neighbors was good. I didn't necessarily think Bolduc was a problem in that game. I looked at your top players, and if this is the second time in 6 games that you're talking about giving up and the effort wasn't there, Shen and Falk both said, look, it's on us to figure this one out. It's the guys that are out there. And at some point you have to look at it and say, okay, well, if the leaders aren't leading this team through the adversity in terms of still being an inconsistent squad with the same mistakes that we've seen for the last 3 years, at what point do you question that?
I just don't want to overreact to one game. That's where I'm at right now. Because until this becomes an avalanche, it's one game. It's a really bad game. And Jeremy Rutherford's piece said it was the most embarrassing performance, the worst effort that he has seen by a Blues team in the 20 years that he's covered the team. So you have to, it's real. You've got to assess it as such. But so far, it's just one game. If that continues, if we start seeing more of that, then yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more about it.
But it's also 3 in your last 7.
Well, and
I didn't feel like they gave up in some of these.
Yeah, I didn't feel like they gave up there.
No, but still didn't have the effort. And Shen questioned the effort after the Ottawa Senators game.
And how much do you go back to they questioned this stuff last year too? This isn't just.
I think
2
you just
games
hear
and
this
7
from hockey players too. I just think this is something that these guys say. I feel like as we've heard from Ryan O'Reilly and Braden Shin over the years, they just say stuff in the post games. There's only so many things that you can say after a game like that, and that's one of them. This felt different. This one was an effort thing. They stopped playing. That's embarrassing and can't happen again. But we'll see what that looks like tomorrow. We'll talk about that certainly plenty more tomorrow on the show here. But coming up next, we'll get to the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care. And if you don't have a company that's taking care of your older HVAC system, then it's time to call Classic Air Care, who've been making people comfortable since 1926. And I talk so much about their maintenance agreement because it's something that I've been using since 2016. It took care of a 23-year-old unit and a 26-year-old unit in two separate houses. And what the maintenance agreement is every year, Classic Air Care comes out twice a year, right before you flip the heater on for the winter season or right before you flip the air conditioner on for the hot summer. They'll come out, they clean your unit, they fine-tune it, make sure everything's good to go to get you through the seasons. And when there's issues that pop up, because you're a part of their maintenance agreement, you get top priority. So you call with an issue, you're on their schedule immediately to come out and fix those problems. So make sure you check out this maintenance agreement. You can sign up for it at classicaircare.com. You can also schedule your evaluation appointment to have them come out and take a look at your older unit, or maybe it's a brand new unit and you need somebody to make sure that that is there for you long term. Classic Air Care or classicaircare.com.
If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Friday night is the 3rd annual TMA Trivia Night at St. Gabe's. Purchase single tickets, tables of 8, or anything in between. You can participate in a trivia night hosted by the morning after. Tickets include food from Heavy Smoke and adult beverages from Show Me Beverages while supplies last. Portion of the proceeds from that night will go to support St. Gabe's. Get all the ticket details at 101ESPN.com. Alex, tonight we do have an NFL game. People will be able to hear that right here on 101 ESPN beginning at 6:30 for pregame coverage. Rams versus the Dolphins. Who do you like in this one?
I like the Rams.
T-Bone?
I like the Rams as well. I think you're going to see they've got some of their offensive pieces back. I think it's going to be a shootout. I like the over in it, but I think Rams win.
I like Devon Achane overs on his props is what I really like in this one. I think he's going to have a huge night tonight. I think it's going to be close. I like the odds on a money line for the Dolphins. I probably wouldn't bet either side, but if you want to bet, I would go with the Devon Achane overs in this game. We'll talk about that. We will certainly talk more about the Blues versus the Bruins. For Alex and T-Bone, I am BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. By the way, Alex, we have a big guest tomorrow as well.
Jamie Langenwerner, so former Blue, who was on those 11, 12, 12, 13 when the Blues started to get back into contention. He's also the assistant GM for the Boston Bruins, so he's going to join us at 12:30 tomorrow.
Looking forward to that. Jeremy Rutherford also tomorrow, so be sure to stay tuned for that. The Fast Lane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN.